Oh, I'm live, I believe. Yes, there we go. Sorry about that. Just letting one of the doggies out. And the other one has just come in straight away as I've done that. Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us, Dune Book Club. Bear with me one wee second, please. Oh, go on. Go on. That's a girl. There we go. Sorry about that. I put one dog out and the other one comes in. Apologies. Yeah, hello, everybody. It's a terrible day here. Very, very cold. Very wet. We've had some snow and some hailstones. And it's absolutely blustery and freezing, what the BBC would call bitterly cold here today. So it's a nasty, nasty old day. So I hope you're all keeping well, no matter where you are. Maybe the weather's a bit better wherever you're at. And we'll have a little look at our next chapter tonight, which is chapter 7 in Dune, which begins with, as usual, one of our epigraphs. So let's have a wee look at it. And hopefully a few of you, while you're joining me, can say hello, etc. Let me know that you're there. Right, so as usual, we have an epigraph to start off with. And we'll just read this one, as usual. With the Lady Jessica and Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit's system of sewing implant legends through the Missionaria Protectiva came to its full fruition. The wisdom of seeding the known universe with a prophecy pattern for the protection of Bene Gesserit personnel has long been appreciated, but never have we seen a condition ut extremis with more ideal mating of person and preparation. The prophetic legend had taken on Arrakis even to the extent of adopted labels, including Reverend Mother, Canto, and Respondu, and excuse me, and most of the Sharia Panoplia Propheticus, and it is generally accepted now that the Lady Jessica's latent abilities were grossly underestimated. So there we go. And this is from the analysis of the Arrakeen crisis by the Princess Irulan for private circulation, Bene Gesserit file number, blah, 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 etc. You all right there, Noodles? There's Cynthia saying hello. Hello, Cynthia. How are you doing? Thanks very much for joining us. Excuse me. Throat's always a bit froggy at the start, and it tends to get a bit better. So there we are. So in particular, this chapter really, I suppose it's telling us about a few different things. But within the epigraph, this is about Lady Jessica and the Panoplia Propheticus being, I suppose, an ideal mating of an individual person and a set of myths that have been prepared for extreme conditions that would help that person. And of course, it even gives us a little bit of a hint of some of these ideas that some of the prophetic legends had taken on Arrakis, and including some of the adopted labels, which include Reverend Mother, Canto, and Respondu, which are part of ritual, I suppose. And of course, the title Reverend is to be revered as a person of authority and respect. And of course, the last little part of this suggests it is generally accepted now that the Lady Jessica's latent abilities were grossly underestimated. So something about Jessica's abilities being much, much better than what even I suppose the Bene Gesserit suspected. And that's what we get a little bit of a hint of from the epigraph. Of course, we're going to see a lot of Jessica in this chapter. Excuse me. And we're going to get a little bit of her with Leto, and then of course we're going to encounter her with the Shadout Mapes. And everything has moved. And they spent the first 6 chapters of Dune on mostly on Caladan, but occasionally we popped over to Gidi Prime briefly to see the Baron and his cohorts. But we've now had this move from Caladan to Arrakis. And you're behaving yourself, Noodles. So we start off with the actual chapter. All around the Lady Jessica, piled in corners of the Arrakeen Great Hall, mounted in the open spaces, stood the packaged freight of their lives. Boxes, trunks, cartons, cases, some partly unpacked. She could hear the cargo handlers from the guild shuttle depositing another load in the entry. So these packages and boxes are a kind of way of Herbert kind of shifting the action, shifting the dialogue a wee bit within the chapter. Each time there's a little shift, there's some boxes arrive or make a noise, etc. Excuse me. So it's a good the boxes kind of arriving and coming and going, except within essentially what is House Atreides' new household, are kind of going to be kind of making little appearances and noises, etc., as we shift through the action. Cynthia says, "Do you think this suggests that the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen was the one who underestimated her, or the Bene Gesserit education as a whole?" It's a good question, and it's from the epigraph that we get a sense that this is a Bene Gesserit pamphlet or some kind in private circulation, and the BG suggests it's a Bene Gesserit fact. What it says is that it's generally accepted now that the Lady Jessica's latent abilities were grossly underestimated. So I would imagine that as from a Bene Gesserit point of view as a whole, I would imagine that she'd also come under some level of some level of speculation following the Arrakeen affair. So it's hard to say, but I'd imagine that it's I think it's Gaius Helen Mohiam who's probably the key person there. But I think she's a bit biased when it comes to Jessica. I don't know. We're going to get her described in an interesting way later on in relation to the Bene Gesserit school, Cynthia. And I suppose there's a bit of a suggestion that what they say is not quite accurate in terms of how they view her, and that's more just to do with her appearance. The Bene Gesserit school's sisters call her skinny when describing her to Duke Leto's buyers. And Leto thinks that that's an oversimplified description. It's not quite right. So yeah, it's a good question. So the Chaya saying shalom all. Shalom, Chaya. Thanks very much for joining us. Hope the weather's not too bad where you're at. It's pretty awful here. Excuse me, and I hope you're all keeping well, folks. We're just getting started as usual. So we're getting the scene framed for us again. We're in a new setting. We've been quite sort of comfortable in getting used to the training room in Castle Caladan as we've encountered an awful lot of these different characters so far. And yeah, we have, I suppose, that little phrase there, the packaged freight of their lives. They've been completely uprooted, and I think it's quite interesting in this chapter. We're going to get a sort of sense of what Jessica really thinks of Leto Atreides' plan, I suppose. And I suppose we also find out that it's the guild. There's cargo handlers from the guild shuttle depositing stuff around here, so we're kind of getting a sense of, I think as much as you travel guild, they can do your packing and unpacking for you as well. And this scene sort of frames Jessica a wee bit. And I said we're in the Great Hall, and again, I think Chaya's mentioned this, that it's often he's painting a picture for it. It's almost as if he's setting things up for a camera here. She stands in the center of this hall, and again we get this movement, and with her movement she takes in the hall and really gives a sense of it to us, the reader. So she moves in a slow turn, looking up and around at the shadowed carvings, the crannies, and deeply recessed windows. The giant anachronism of a room reminded her of the sisters' hall at her Bene Gesserit school, but at the school the effect had been of warmth. Here all was bleak stone. So we get a few interesting turns of phrase here, I think, and I think one of the most interesting one is in this universe is the use of the word anachronism. And as we learn more about the Dune universe, we find out how anachronistic it is in some ways. But this entire room is an anachronism. It's a thing out of its place in this time. It's a thing from the past. Chaya is saying there that the Bene Gesserit never tapped Jessica to be a reverend mother, just looked at her as a cog in the breeding program. Yeah, and I often wonder, is it because we talk about this underestimation of Cynthia was saying there, who's underestimated, or is it Bene Gesserit education? Is it those who are in charge of the breeding program? Is it Gaius Helmoheim? And why do they underestimate her so badly? Why do they get it all so wrong so badly when they're generally so clever? And is it maybe because, as much as I think, is it possible that they're so focused on the next, the Kwisatz Haderach itself, that they never bother really to assume that something so simple can go wrong under their direction? And again, I think that we've talked a bit about the fantastic little wonderful sentence at the end of the book. I think is in Appendix 4. Let me just check. No, hang on 1 wee second. It's the very last line of Appendix 3, and is my favorite line in all of the Dune series, really. In the face of these facts, one is led to the inescapable conclusion that the inefficient Bene Gesserit behavior in this affair was a product of an even higher plan of which they were completely unaware. I think that's the super mystery of Dune right there. But as we were saying, much as a cog in the breeding program, have they underestimated her? And we're getting that sense from Irulan's report here. Is it's not just underestimated; it's grossly underestimated. They've got her really badly wrong. So yeah, there is something about the Bene Gesserit getting stuff quite badly wrong here, and that doesn't fit. The BBP says that doesn't fit the Bene Gesserit. Jessica was the next step in their program. Regardless of her potential, they need her to have a child. Yeah, I said it doesn't quite make sense. And we wonder what that line's describing, that their inefficient behavior. And the big question is, why does it take them? I suppose we've asked this before. Why does it take them 15 years to figure out that or what are they doing, or why do they not do anything within the 15 years of Jessica giving birth to Paul and the Reverend Mother turning up to test him with the Gom Jabbar? So that there's a plenty that doesn't fit, I suppose, and we can wonder about it. But yeah, but regardless, I suppose the suggestion is grossly underestimated. I think is that they've made a real bad mistake with her, and again, I think that's why whenever she's described later on in this chapter from Leto's point of view, and he's wondering about her heritage, and the terms that he uses to describe her are regal. What's the other one? Let me see if I can find it here. Excuse me. Stateliness. That's it. He admires her stateliness, and he notes that she looks more regal than the Emperor's own blood. Whereas that doesn't fit with what I suppose the little bit after that, when we'll get to it, is it doesn't really fit with what they both remember the incident, I suppose, of how would we describe it? Leto's purchase of Jessica. Both of their memories of that comes to mind in this chapter. He remembers buying her, and the Bene Gesserit sisters, as it says there, they described her as skinny to his buyers, which is, as he said, it's an oversimplified description. Skinny doesn't equal regal, I suppose, in that sense, So yeah, she doesn't quite match her. I suppose Jessica, even to Leto, wasn't as advertised. Chaya says at this point the Bene Gesserit are only a generation or two from achieving their Kwisatz Haderach, maybe too focused on the common goal after 90 generations of scheming and waiting. And Peter's saying, hi Peter. Peter Zydek says it's like Mohiam and Jessica are two anti-Virgin Mary archetypes or something. Leto is Joseph, Paul is the Messiah, and Jessica is also like an Eve archetype. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, from Chaya's point, Chaya, what you're saying there basically, it's just yeah, why I suppose we can wonder, and it's maybe just being blind to something. If you're that focused on it, maybe they miss it all. Um, Peter, the archetypes, yeah. Anti-Virgin Mary archetype. Well, that's mentioned, isn't it? What is it? Let me see if I can quickly get you the. It's to do with Alia, isn't it? What a Bene Gesserit must be. So in that sense, they're both Bene Gesserit. Bear with me if I can find the right epigraph. Oh, hold on. Let me see. The Reverend Mother must combine the seductive wiles of a courtesan with the untouchable majesty of a virgin goddess. There we go. There's something, yeah, it's to do with St. Alia of the Knife. There's another quotation about Alia somewhere at some point. Tell you what, bear with me a wee second to see if I can get it for you. That's where we keep all this stuff handy. And let's have a wee search. Let's see. Right, it's actually to do with archetypes as well, because just talking about different archetypes here, we have the virgin, the harlot, the syzygy, heroine, mother, child, hierophant, a whole bunch of them. And here we go. This is the wee bit just to quote you. It's about Alia, and it's just the sort of different archetypes that she has. But just wanted to apply that the three of them as a trinity, if you like. The Fremen see her as the earth figure, a demigoddess whose special charge is to protect the tribes through her powers of violence. She's the Reverend Mother to their Reverend Mothers. Pardon me, to pilgrims who seek her out with demands that she restore virility or make the barren fruitful. She's a form of anti-mentat. She feeds on that proof that the analytic has limits. She represents ultimate tension. She is the virgin harlot, witty, vulgar, cruel, as destructive in her whims as a Coriolis storm. And as much as that's describing Alia, it's just in terms of what you were saying there about those kind of archetypes. But yeah, they also, I think, Leto was Joseph, Paul is the Messiah. Yeah, you could run with that one. I think the one character that, yeah, Leto was Paul is the Messiah. Absolutely. Well, he's the Messiah, all right. Jessica's like an Eve archetype. First woman, yeah. Masculine is MG Toast, Moshe, Ben, Joseph, or David. And then I'd rather pristineness than untouchableness. Peter Zidek, oh yes, good memory. Hello all. Hi guys, by the way, thanks very much for joining us. There's Joseph. Hello, Joseph. Yeah, so it's very much so. Who's that saying that there? Was it Peter? Peter, the particularly, I think, with Mohiam and Jessica, later on we add Alia, we have that kind of grandmother, mother, daughter, that kind of, they talk about the great goddess and this, etc., but that kind of Trinity goddess, and that kind of set of archetypes there. So there's quite a few, and just reading that wee bit about Alia, I think what I was wanting to say is it kind of applies about Jessica as well, is that both characters move through different archetypes. And as much as and Jessica can be seen in terms of the mother here, and as the heroine, I think at this point. Later on, she's also part of a syzygy with Leto. And as much as Leto's name is an inversion, I suppose, in terms of we were talking about the gender inversion of the name Leto the last week, and the last episode, and the association with the goddess Leto, who's seen as well, is she a god? She's not really a goddess, is she? What would she be? Is she like a titanid or something like that? Um, her association with motherhood, and is almost part of a trinity representation with Apollo and Artemis. So yeah, Jessica kind of moves through a few of these as well, um, which is quite yeah. I think it's quite interesting actually. Lots of the archetypes, particularly yeah, the Jungian archetypes. I have to refresh my memory on those, but they play a big part within the structure of Dune. And I think, as we've pointed out before, Herbert uses he uses Jungian mandalas to actually write, construct his story, and sort of pair characters against each other and so on. But yeah, the characters and archetypes is a big thing here. And right, yeah. So the room's this an anachronism, and we get a sense, um, and I think a sense of foreboding throughout this chapter with Jessica. We get a sense of the feeling of our new surroundings, the new world that we're in. And just prior to this, she's sorry, we were saying about the room being an anachronism, which I thought was kind of a strange term, particularly when we're in this bizarre sort of feudal universe that arguably is quite anachronistic. Once the term I prefer is atavistic, I think. Um, hmm. So we talk about the structure of this room. Some architect far back into history, or has reached far back into history for these buttress walls, dark hangings, etc. Arched ceilings are 2 stories above her with great cross beams, and she felt sure that they'd been shipped here to Arrakis across space at monstrous cost. No planet of this system grew trees. No planet of this system grew trees to make such beams, unless the beams were imitation wood. And I think what follows is very, very sort of Jessica. She thought not. She's made a decision about that. They're not artificial, and she's quite certain, and she moves on to the next thing. But an interesting, just describing the room, this great hall gives it a great sort of vaulted architectural structure to it, and kind of gives us a crisscross framing of which that she's at the center. So again, Herbert's just sort of setting up our scene, our stage here, if you like, and we get a little bit more info about, I suppose, the geography of Arrakis coming up, and about the building that they're in. So we're told it's an old. This building used to be the government mansion in the days of the old empire. I suppose that makes us wonder what's the separation between the old empire and the current empire. And costs have been less important then, but it had been before the Harkonnens had built their new megalopolis of Carthage, or sorry, Carthag, a cheap and brassy place some 200 kilometers northeast across the broken land. So we get one more wee point here just to make, I suppose, Leto had been wise to choose this place for his seat of government. The name Arrakeen had a good sound, filled with tradition, and this was a smaller city, easy to sterilize and defend. And there's quite a bit there. Excuse me, that tells us quite a bit. Quite a bit there. It tells us quite a bit. That's not particularly flowing very well, is it? We learn all sorts of little things there, and particularly about the geography. We know that the Harkonnens have actually built a city, a megalopolis, we're told, and that it's called Carthag. And I think we've mentioned this before. It's a wee bit suggestive of Carthage. We're told it's 200 kilometers northeast of where they're at. The city's cheap and brassy. And in contrast, that they've picked this place, and Leto has been wise to do so. Interestingly, I suppose his wisdom in the sense that if we think about it, that Leto's choices fall down to he likes the sound of the name Arrakeen. Sounds good, has a sense of tradition, this kind of thing, right? Though there's a more of a pragmatism to it. And again, we get a better sense of the Atreides. It's a smaller city, therefore it's easier to sterilize and defend. Defend one thing, to sterilize, and it's an interesting term. So again, gives us a wee bit of an idea about the Atreides and their sense of how they go about their business, I suppose. And to catch up with a few of your comments here, guys. Alia Trinity, very cool. I forgot. Yeah, I suppose that isn't it? Pity that Ali is not really here yet. I suppose she's a great character. It's funny when you're working through a book like this slowly. You kind of wait. You want to, you're looking forward to encountering some characters, but definitely Alia is the business. I really like her as a character. Peter says, I can't wait till we get to the scene with her and Paul in the tent at the end of book 1. She's in some kind of mother losing her son archetype there. She's sort of the syzygy dual hero with Paul. Yeah, but she might be part anti-hero where Paul is the hero archetype to the Atreides and soon the Fremen. Even the Harkonnens and Emperor can sense it. Well, there's that bit, of course, where my mother is my enemy. But it's really interesting, actually, whenever we do get to that scene. We're going to have a look at another book of Frank's, actually. So whenever we get to the tent scene, we're going to break it down, have a look at it. But then I want to point you to something, that there's a very similar scene in The Dragon in the Sea. And they're both moments of, I suppose, birth. And I suppose that in the still tent, I suppose when Paul emerges out of the sphincter of the tent, it's like being reborn. And of course, that's from that point, he's Muad'Dib, I suppose. But yeah, yes, it's going to be fun having a look at the archetypes, actually. And I think the best time to do that, Peter, is when we have all the pieces on the board and we can actually apply all of them and we can take a real sort of moment or two to have a good look at them. But yeah, Jessica is hero, I think. Part anti-hero, hero too. I definitely think. And she's hero. She's a mother. Let me see. She's one half of a syzygy. She's 1/3 of the Trinity, if you like. As I said, many of the characters fit into archetypes, and they'll shift archetypes with other characters. So, and she'll also become part of a syzygy, if you like, with Stilgar, and then she's part of a syzygy with Paul, and then Paul becomes, I suppose, a part of a syzygy with Chani as well. So yeah, there's the archetype stuff's pretty interesting, and I must grab my copy of Jung's Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, have a look at that and get that up and get the info out and stuff. But I've got some of that in a particular chapter, so I'll get the PhD up on the screen as well, because it's all quite well referenced, etc. And I think we have a whole section where we look at the sort of Jungian, the influence of the Jungian archetypes. But it's good fun stuff, actually. I have to say, it takes us well into mythology. So there we go. So yeah, we're getting a little bit of info about Carthage, and I said there's shadings of Carthage there. Again, another reference to the ancient world. And we had a wee mention about Carthage, I think, in the last episode. The Carthage, the Punic Wars, etc. And that's kind of ends up, I suppose, a bit of a vendetta kind of thing. Punic Wars is a war between Carthage and 3 wars between Carthage and Rome. Right, let's see. So yeah, very much. I mean, and if you can think about this place, the way it's been described to us, that's it seems quite impressive, wide open, huge ceiling, and if you were taking the whole room in, the way it's described with Jessica at the center of it, I imagine that she would, from our viewpoint, the way the room's described by the narrator, she would seem very small and probably quite lonely in this gigantic room. I think it's an interesting way of framing her to start this chapter off. And the other thing I would add, by the way, is that we've arrived on Dune, but we're inside, and we're going to get a little bit of a sense of the world in this chapter, mainly through as we do through the interactions with characters like Mapes, and we're going to learn a lot about, I suppose, the planet Arrakis. We're going to learn a little bit about the culture here. We're going to start to learn about the importance of water, and I suppose also we're going to learn about the various myths that the Bene Gesserit have sown on this planet, and this is all tied in to do with the epigraph at the start of this. How Jessica is so perfectly suited that, as I said, the epigraph describes her as an ideal mating of individual and prepared prophecy. So we're going to start to see how some of those myths and ideas of prophecy, etc., how they've been working on the Fremen mind, particularly through Mapes, etc. So Leto has been seen as wise in taking this city rather than Carthage. But yeah, I think we get the gist that Carthage is a city that the Harkonnens have built themselves, rather than sort of live with the natives, if you see what I mean. And I always got the sense of it that as much as it's more modern, it's kind of like I don't know, almost like a flat pack city or something. It's just something that they've set up pretty quickly. Now, saying that, it must have been there for some time, People saying at this point in the story he's very young, 15, and kind of a mama's boy due to loneliness. I think Herbert did a great job of indicating Paul's consciousness is not yet independent of Jessica's. Yeah, I was actually thinking about that the other day, Peter, as well. Of course, we're going to be asking where's Paul shortly, but it was just in relation to, I suppose, the Pelopid line, the Atreides family, and the association in particular with that family with the Trojan War, and particularly all the various heroes and so on. And I think we were talking about, as much as there's many associations with Paul Atreides, with Agamemnon, I suppose, and multiple individuals from the House of Atreides, if you like, are from the Pelopid line. But we're also saying there's a strong association with Paul Atreides with Oedipus. But the other character that I often thought was interesting, and just in terms of picking this up again from reading Dune here, in terms of his age and being thrown into the war, etc., I've mentioned before that Achilles is 15 at the start of the Trojan War. He's given his first command at 15. But in relation to, I suppose, how Paul is kept sheltered, Achilles is kept sheltered as well. And in fact, he's disguised as a girl, I believe, a fair bit. And it's to do with a prophecy, to do with him, I suppose, that Achilles is offered a choice, isn't he? That it's, I think he can have long life and happiness, but nobody will ever know who he is, or he can have a short life and immortality. I think that's the choice of Achilles. But I'm pretty sure his mother tries to hide him from from the various Greeks who turn up to recruit him for the Trojan War. And I think it's a test. I think Achilles is tested in a similar way, if I can remember correctly, that Odysseus is tested, because he also doesn't really want to go to war. But I can't remember what it is. I think they leave out some nice things and some weapons and armor. And of course, Achilles goes to the weapons and armor, and they go, "Aha, that's Achilles," But I believe he's dressed as a woman at the point. Odysseus, I think, is that Odysseus pretends to be mad, and I think he puts his cart on together with a horse and an ox on the same yoke, and starts sowing salt on the ground. And so he pretends to be mad. So one particular guy puts Odysseus's child, the baby Telemachus, in front of the cart, and figures that if Odysseus is mad, he'll run over his own child, and if he's not, he'll swerve to avoid him. And of course, Odysseus does swerve, and that's kind of how the Greeks go, "Aha, you're not mad, so you're going to the war," So this kind of thing. But yeah, so it just made me think a little bit about Achilles again, and I'm thinking that there's a bit of an analog there with Paul. The whole 15 years of it, the age is the same the first time it's war, and of course Paul's supposed to be a girl, as it ultimately. I wonder if it could be rewrite June, where Jessica gives birth, to a girl, and take the story forward and see how that pans out as an alternative universe. That would be an interesting exercise. Where yeah, well, that would. We often wonder about how book 7 would have went. That's an interesting one. But yeah, at this point, yeah, I agree, and I think Peter as well. I think we noted the last chapter. There's lots of teenage silence and staring, and what the heck, Eerie, this kind of thing from Paul in the previous chapter. So I think that he's definitely, and I think he's also shown he's a little bit of his own man. But yeah, I would, yeah, and I suppose we'll see as we're they're all out of they're fish out of water. No pun intended here at this point. So we'll be interested to see how the relationship develops. And I suppose Leto and Jessica's relationship becomes under our scrutiny here at this point. So we get, Peter saying the Achilles heel. I have to watch some great stuff. To get up to speed. Yeah. What's it? There was a rather good. Oh no, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a rather good TV miniseries, like a kind of movie of Troy. I think it was called Helen of Troy. It came out a few years back, and I can't remember what the exact title of it was, but it's the one where oh goodness, I'm trying to remember. Stellan Skarsgård's in it at the very start as Theseus. That one, that's quite a good retelling of the Trojan War. And I suppose it takes the Helen of Troy is kidnapped by Theseus prior to the famous sort of abduction or voluntary dandering off with Paris. So she's kidnapped by Theseus as a young girl, and that's a story that's a story within Greek mythology. So it's included within it. So it's a pretty good version. It's kind of a made for TV. What was it the chap that played Baltar in the Battlestar Galactica TV series, the reimagining, is in it as well. He's Menelaus. He's quite good at it. I can't remember his name for the life of me. Excuse me, but I'm wandering off there. But yeah, so and let's see. Yeah, the name Arrakeen, by the way, just that little bit about it sounds good tradition. It gives it. We get a real sense from this. I do anyway. That Leto is superstitious, I think. And I'm trying to figure out I don't want to be too confident when I say superstitious. I don't know if he's superstitious or not, but he's starting to come across as being superstitious rather than as a person who uses superstition for show, for pomp and circumstance, if you see what I mean. There's just quite a few little things that kind of, I suppose superstition and tradition. So, but the other little thing I suppose is this place is just the key word to point out about the Atreides. The smaller city is easier to sterilize. And sterilize, I suppose, doesn't mean, getting your debt all out and squirting down a few germs, that kind of thing. And I suppose the other interesting thing is Jessica doesn't particularly bat an eyelid about this. So there we go. But it's again the universe they live in. So we get a whole bunch of, and as I said, boxes coming and going and arriving and making noises kind of frames the action a little bit in this chapter. And we get a clatter of boxes being unloaded in the entry, and Jessica sighing. And against the curtain to her right, we're told we get a little bit of some of the artifacts of House Atreides. We're told stood the painting of the Duke's father. Wrapping twine hung from it like a frayed decoration. A piece of the twine was still clutched in Jessica's left hand. Beside the painting lay a black bull's head mounted on a polished board. The head was a dark island in a sea of wadded paper. Its plaque lay flat on the floor, and the bull's shiny muzzle pointed at the ceiling as though the beast were ready to bellow a challenge into this echoing room. So we have a little bit of House Atreides artifacts, and we get more description about them as we go through the chapter. And pretty much Jessica's a bit kind of, I think, on edge about these a little bit, if that's the right term. And so the two things in particular, and we're going to have a bit of an interaction about these two artifacts that Leto is not going to move on or budge in any way, shape, or form. One of these is the painting of his father, dressed as a matador with a purple cape, and the other one is, I suppose, a mounted bull's head on a polished board, and a part of that there's a plaque that goes with it. And this we'll find is, I suppose we're going to find out, this is the bull that killed Leto's father. And I suppose what's kind of interesting, Herbert kind of points this out to us. It gives us a little bit of description. The head was on a dark island in a sea of wadded paper. Its plaque lay flat on the floor, and the bull's shiny muzzle pointed at the ceiling as though the beast were ready to bellow a challenge into this echoing room. Jessica wondered what compulsion had brought her to uncover those two things first. Pardon me. The head and the painting. That's the way she describes it. The head and the painting. She knew there was something symbolic in this action, not since the day when the Duke's buyers had taken her from the school had she felt this frightened and unsure of herself. And it's repeated for us. The head and the picture, And I suppose it's a bit of a grotesquerie, isn't it? It depends on how you feel about such things. But in terms of, I suppose, in terms of framing the picture, the framing the scene that we're, we have in the Great Hall of Arrakeen at the minute, it is interesting, and I'm assuming we kind of focus on this the way that she has, and we get the little bits of details about it, but we get the real sense that Jessica's unsure of herself. She's frightened, and I think part of that unsettled, being frightened, is coming from these artifacts of House Atreides and seeing them in this strange place. And I suppose, of course, we've got a picture of Paul's grandfather, Leto's father, but also this severed head and this bull. James, let's see. I'll catch up with some of your comments here first of all, folks. Hang on. Peter saying, let's see, that's where I'm at. Peter was saying he rebounds through periods of independence and dependence until Chani arrives soon after he's a man. Chani, that was just in relation to Paul being sort of attached to his mother. Chani says, one interesting note about the map, there's a Mount Idaho foreshadowing Leto II's reign. Is that right? Is that on... I suppose, yes. Again, I like to think... Where's my map? Let's have a wee look. Most likely, as we had some... we've got cartographic notes for the map. I think I mentioned, was it 4 characters? Shrine of Leto's skull overlooks the path, hard path. I think 4 different characters were mentioned in the cartographic novels. And if we in the cartographic notes, sorry, and if we paid it, Mount Idaho, I see it right there. Who's is Dorothy DeFontaine? Dorothy DeFontaine, I think, is the original map designer there, or artist there. Yeah, again, part of the fact that we're reading a sort of collection of prepared documents, epigraphs, and then the section again, we're getting in, I suppose, the inner thoughts of characters and stuff. It's almost as if the whole thing is packaged, and then there's appendices for it. Almost as if this book itself could be an artifact within the Dune universe, following the events of this book. Yeah, foreshadowing Leto the Second's reign. Achilles' heel. Yes, indeed, the Achilles' heel. Um, must be Greek. There we go. James Callis. That's correct. That's it. James Callis is very 2003's Helen of Troy played Menelaus. Thank you, colleges and cannibals. Thanks very much, and thank you for joining us. Excellent. Paulus equals Orion, Taurus the bull. They're placed in the firmament. Orion, and the bull, the hunter. We'll have a wee look at the Orion. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Wife was actually just talking to me because I was out I like going out and having a nosy at the stars. Tend to walk the dogs quite late in the AM here, and but the weather's been so bad. I haven't seen the stars in ages, which is a real bummer. Ancestors to myth to gods. Excuse me. This is in relation to Leto. Is that his name, by the way, Peter? Is that Leto's father's name? Is Paulus? I have to check that one. I hadn't caught it. I can't. I certainly can't remember it. It's in the book. Leto, distaff cousin of the Carinos, Fremen from the Red Duke, Atreides with Caladan, Sudar 5, blah blah blah. Yeah, I was. What was that one from the? I don't know. Maybe did we get his name in this? What's Orion? Yeah, the bull. Orion the Hunter is killed by a scorpion, though, isn't he? Depends on which version of the myth, but that's an interesting one we'll have to look at. The bull itself as well, within the bull, the association with the bull, a whole set of myths to do with Crete and Minoan myths, etc. And they're also they're connected to they're connected to the Pelopids as well. And so the bull itself is a symbol of kingship, of divinity, etc. within the ancient world. Very, very important. And we have the whole sort of, I suppose, Cretan myths, wouldn't we say? Which is, oh goodness, let me see. Minos, etc., and his brothers Rhadamanthus and Pasiphae, and that includes the whole Minoan thing with the bull is very, very interesting. And if anybody wants to check out some of the archaeological stuff, look at the work of Arthur Evans and so on. I have a few books on places like Knossos. And the archaeological evidence there is incredible. And you'll see if you look at friezes, etc., you'll see what's. I'll let me dig this out for you. Actually, I might have one of these books handy at some point for next time if I can find it, rather than me running around. It's what's called the bull leaping, and you kind of there's artwork there, which is like think of it as like a 3-paneled frieze, almost like it's sequential art. So it's essentially a comic book for want of a better word, but it shows you these bull leapers, I suppose, in the kind of before, during, and after their leap with said bull, etc. And there's an awful lot of stuff attached to bulls within mythology. We also have within Irish mythology, they're very important as well. So we have, I suppose, one of the big major epics in Irish mythology is called the Toynbee Cully. I suppose, which translates as the cattle raid of Cully. And that's Cuchulainn and all that stuff. And but it's essentially about a war fought over a sacred bull. And again, you get that's a thing that goes around a lot of different cultures. So yeah, I must have a wee nosy about that and see what details we can look up. But I bet it works on lots of different levels, actually. Brad saying it's strange that the bull is a trophy from a loss rather than a victory. Is there a relationship to that for that to mythology? Well, I'm not too sure. Again, I'll have a wee look into that, Brad. I suppose often wearing the head of something upon your shield, if you like, is that's the monster. This kind of thing is relatively common. You have what's called the Aegis. Excuse me. Um, which, depending on how you read it, is either like a shield or a girdle, like a belt, with Medusa's head on it that's sort of wielded, and I think it's wielded by Athena, isn't it? It turns everyone to stone. So there's a few examples of terrorizes people as well, doesn't it? There's a few examples of animal heads, beast heads being mounted on shields and so on. But it's one of those, in this case within the Minoan myths. It's one of these sacred bull things again, and you've got all sorts within that, and of course you've got the Minotaur. But it's a bit like Ram as well. So you'll get these things. But yeah, as associated with loss rather than victory, that's interesting. I'll have a wee look at that. But again, I would say it's divine animal, symbol of kingship as well. And I suppose for the king to prove his virility against such an animal, I think that there's bound to be a few analogues there. Cynthia says, as we'll find in the upcoming conversation, the head and painting also represent Jessica's status as concubine, able to eat elsewhere versus wife that must eat in the presence of the bull. That's absolutely. Yes, Jessica's eating habits. Yeah, we're going to have a wee chat about that, Cynthia, because again, I suppose it's a bit about their relationship as well. But I think since that she's very happy to not eat in front of the severed head of the animal that killed her husband's father. I'd argue it's also a symbol of the house's mortality. It's a reminder, I suppose, that it's a reminder of all sorts of things. Maybe that did the Duke just get unlucky? Maybe this kind of thing. The random this animal bringing down a great house, arguably, a reminder. I don't know. It's interesting. Why would you keep such a thing around? And it speaks to maybe something to do with Leto's mentality. As I said, maybe it makes me think of him sometimes as not just all about show and gesture, bread and circus, is this kind of thing, and that he's also maybe buys into some of the superstition. And who's to say? I mean, arguably, the Bene Gesserit must have sown some myths and things on Caladan, I suppose. you know. But yeah, and again, the other thing that we get from this. I mean, Cynthia's talking about Jessica's status as concubine, but this is the thing that actually brings up her feelings of being essentially bought. And if we take that in for a second, we can use words that she's a bound concubine, etc., etc. But essentially, she hasn't felt like this. Let me just see if I'm reading it correctly. Oh, sorry, just looking couldn't find my page there. There we are. Not since the day when the Duke's buyers had taken her from the school had she felt this frightened and unsure of herself. Excuse me. So not, and the word there's taken, hasn't she didn't go, they've paid a fee, shall I go to the Duke's house now? I shall go. So they came and took her. And arguably, if you depending on how you want to look at it, let's see, how do we put this? The word rape has two different meanings, and you have what's called de facto rape and what's called de jure rape. So de jure rape is what we call brutal sexual assault, etc., against someone's will in courts, etc. And that's what that is. The old-fashioned word has different meanings, including that, but it literally means to seize something, to take something away, to lift it, to take. So, in one sense, I suppose we can look at this. How would I put it? That it's almost like the rape in the old-fashioned sense. And what I mean is, we talk about the rape of Helen, and it, depending on how you look at that, we don't mean the sexual assault of Helen. For example, the rape of Helen is the kidnapping of Helen, as described in art, etc. That's how it's often referred to. And we have, I suppose, what would be the rape of the Sabine women as well within Romans mythology and legend. So, in one sense, she's taken away as de facto rape in an old-fashioned sense, and that she's bought, she's purchased, that she's a slave. So I don't know what you guys think about this. This is the Bene Gesserit at work here, and this is how their universe works. And in a sense that she's brought up to believe that this is the way the thing works, but essentially she's bought. And that makes her property, I think. So that essentially is, I don't know. And as I said, we get this term later on when she's chatting to Mapes. There's no wife, I'm a bound concubine. And again, it just depends on how we look at these things. But yeah, it suddenly, well, for me, particularly whenever you're reading this, I suppose we talk about whenever we get to see how she interacts with Mapes. I think this in particular starts to garner real sympathy for Jessica. And that what we're being, and again, this is her thoughts, that she hadn't felt like this since she was taken. This is her feelings. She's frightened and unsure of herself. So that's how she felt whenever the Duke's buyers turned up to buy her. Frightened and unsure, and then some people took her away. And she's had a child to this man, many years have passed, etc. But here she is feeling the same way as that day. And I think it's really interesting, guys, that whenever we get along a bit, when we get to Leto has a little flashback to that day as well. So we kind of get a compare and contrast of how Jessica felt the day that she was bought and how Leto felt the day he bought her, if you see what I mean, which is quite a strange thing. Peterson, did you see what Kim Stanley Robinson did with Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox? Amazing. I think he stole the chapter intros idea from Herbert. No, I haven't a clue. Maybe you can elaborate. Is it that kind of sort of epigraphic intro? The Roman generals returning victorious, yet being whispered in his ear, "Thou art not but a man." Maybe. Memento Mori. They paid a guy to. There's another one, was Memento Damnatio, isn't it? I think, which is being wiped out of existence, if you like, being cancelled. But yes, it's the Memento Mori is remember you too will die, is what the generals get whispered, I think, in their ear, Brad. Yeah. A bull was used as a prize for competition outside Troy. King stole it from Paris, who went to Troy to win it back. Oops. Oh, Babs, you're indicating to me that it's time for me to reread my Iliad and Odyssey. Rape is also used as an agricultural term. There was an invention called a raper. The earlier mechanization of farm work, I think it harvested crop. So Red Mars is the book series. Good stuff. Is that what you're talking about? I got you. Must have a nosy at them. I can't remember them at all. Yeah. That's an interesting one, isn't it, Peter? As a set of books, I just can't remember a thing about. I don't think I was that impressed with them, but I slugged through them, but I don't remember them. And they're sitting right over there. I suppose that's a set to reread. I think I would have to reread them anyway. Yeah, I'm going to have a wee look into the bull's head. I think because I think we're going to find lots actually. The other thing that got me thinking about the bull's head and the matador, guys. I don't know if you not everything's possibly buried in the ancient world. Excuse me. Bear with me a wee second. Now, it's what would you call it? Yes. The other thing that it got me thinking on, I suppose, is the hallucinogenic Toreador. I don't know if any of you know this. This is a painting by Salvador Dali. The bull's head, the black bull's head on the ground, and of course the he's a Toreador, isn't he? As opposed to a matador or a picador is the other one, isn't it? Let's see. There we go. The hallucinogenic Toreador. What a great picture. There we are. So it's the one. I'm sure you could have if you're not familiar with it, have a wee nosy at it on. See if you can get a good high resolution version of it. It's a great picture, and you can stare at it and have a good look at it on, I suppose, many different levels. But it's got all sorts in it. But it's essentially, if you can see the Toreador, the bull, there's bees, there's the Venus de Milo, there's Jesus, there's Hitler, there's all sorts in that. And I think it's a great picture, by the way. And it just got the two things, the head and the particularly the bull, the matador, if you like, with the cape. Kind of got me thinking about that. The symbolism of it. And I suppose it's a severed head with blood, caked on it. And and he puts, I suppose the other thing is, of course, Leto wants that. We're going to find this out. Leto wants it in the dining room, doesn't he? It's not just let's hang it over the, hang it in the, hang it in the hallway or something. It's let's put it where everyone can see it when they're eating. And I suppose there is a grotesquerie to it. And again, I suppose we have the thing with shall we just call it bad manners around the dinner table with the Atreides as a mythological trait with these people, Jessica was purchased by the old Duke's buyers, and yet it was the pairing that the Bene Gesserit wanted. I wonder if the voice was used to influence their decision. That's a very good point. Again, if the Bene Gesserit are manipulating this, then you've got to assume that it didn't matter what the Duke's instructions were. That Jessica was the girl that his buyers would be returning to Caladan with. If you see what I mean. Yeah, it's a good point, Brad. They're not. It's not like leaving it up to chance, or auction, or perhaps. The fact that he doesn't go himself, by the way, I think isn't that strange? I don't. Again, okay, I'm the Duke Leto. I'm lonely. I live on a planet, all by myself, and I'm a pundy rice farmer. And I'd like to meet a nice girl. There's a Bene Gesserit school where I can go buy one. So I'll just send some of my underlings to buy me a companion. You think he'd at least go himself? If this is someone's to be the mother of his child and basically spend all his days with them, you think he'd take some interest. It is quite bizarre. I have to say. Chaya said, "My bad. The invention was a reaper, not a raper. Was used to harvest wheat." What was the other one I was thinking? I suppose just reading. Is it rapine, looting, and pillage? In the sense of the Vikings rape, loot, and pillage. Rapine is so it's the same word 3 times, isn't it? Essentially, to take stuff away, to loot it, to take stuff away, and to pillage. So there are 3 synonyms. And I was just thinking about that in terms of, oddly enough, just for whatever reason there now popped into my head. I don't know if you've ever seen, it would change the plot of Eric the Viking, wouldn't it? This is quite a good film. Mm. It's a Terry Jones book, isn't it? I think. So yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna get a sense of a lot more of Leto. I think Leto's a bit of a I think Leto's a bit of a shit, to be honest with you. I personally don't like Leto as a character, on a whole range of levels. But well, I don't know what you guys think. I know he's quite popular with people, but I don't think he's all as advertised. And I think in a lot of sense we get to see the father through the son's eyes. Later, I suppose, because he's enshrined because of who his son becomes. But I think Leto's, I don't know. Well, I suppose we'll see. Again, so far, and it's Jessica that gives this sense of homesickness. And again, the clouds here get black and cold. We're supposed to be on a desert planet, and as I said, we're inside at the minute, so we're not getting that sense, are we? It's just the real feelings that we're going to get about this place, this house, and then later her sense of the city. Cold, everything's cold here, and I think cold and distant maybe, but a pang of homesickness throbbed through her. So far away, Caladan, and you know, yeah, even the through the clouds through the windows, the skies are, sorry, darker than Caladan's warm blue, and so we have a very homesick, confused, fearful Jessica. Who I said we'll find out that they've only just arrived this morning in a wee bit. Um, but we get, here comes Leto, and it's here we are, and it's an exclamation. It's shouted, "Here we are!" And the voice was Duke Leto's. And again, the reaction from her movements, she whirled, and as she whirled, she spins. He's striding. She's a circle spinning like a whirling dervish, if you like. He's a straight line piling down, and she saw him striding from the arched passage to the dining hall, his black working uniform with red armorial hawk crest at the breast, looking dusty and rumpled. And so he's in the same gear as before, this black working uniform with the red hawk at his breast. And this is the bit where I suppose this is where we get to see a bit of interaction between Jessica and Leto. I think for all that we've heard at this point, if we're new to Dune, by the time we get through this chapter, I would be quite surprised at this, I think. And I don't know. He starts off, I think he's making light of things. I thought you might have lost yourself in this hideous place, but it kind of tells us straight away what he thinks about it. We'll hear Jessica echo Leto's words later on. The phrase, must be a hideous place. Not awful, terrible, but it's absolutely hideous. And the suggestion that she might have lost herself, I think, is a bit probably patronizing in this case, because it's not likely that she would. Possibly more likely he would get lost, I think. But her conversation is kind of deflective, but she responds, it's a cold house. And I think that statement echoes. I think it's not just the place. I think it's got to do with their relationship in a way. I think. I don't know. I'm a wee bit conflicted about it. Let's see what she said. She has a good look at him, and we get a description of Leto again. This time through Jessica's eyes, her viewpoint, and I think it's a very interesting sort of. This is the man that she's meant to love. As the father of her son. Yet at the same time as the person that bought her and couldn't be bothered to turn up and have a look at her. His tallness. He's tall, so we've already had a description of him. Let's have a wee look here. Let's see. She looked at his tallness, at the dark skin that made her think of olive groves, and golden sun on blue waters. There was wood smoke in the grey of his eyes, but the face was predatory, thin, full of sharp angles and pains. And yeah, there's not much. His tallness, it made her think of the dark skin, made her think of olive groves, golden sun, blue waters. Again, the Atreides name, Greece, that kind of thing, olives, olive gardens. Greek and olives basically they go hand in hand, don't they? But that kind of sense of wood smoke in the grey of his eyes. And then we get this face was predatory, sharp angles, pains. He's a predator. And we get this next bit really is interesting. I think if we think about Jessica as a character, what a very strong character that she is, what a very well realized and fleshed out character. Nothing really bothers this woman too much, but she gets a sudden fear of him. And it's not for him, it's of him. Such savage driving person. A sudden fear of him tightened her breast. He had become such a savage driving person since the decision to bow to the Emperor's command. And then she shifts the subject sort of again. The whole city feels cold. It's not just the house, the whole city. Yeah, I think just here she is feeling. Put it this way. Here she is feeling frightened, unsure of herself. This man's meant to be her companion, her partner, her lover, etc. And he piles into the room. Here we are, and what we're going to see of him in a minute is, it's kind of a bit of an Ian banter, isn't it? Really, it's not. Oh, you okay, love? Come here, give you a hug. How you feeling? I know this must be tough. That we've just landed on a new planet. We've uprooted, and have you seen Paul? Is he okay? All of this kind of stuff. And there's just not a right sense about him. I think he's very businesslike, very distracted, but yeah, savage driving. And I think the way she puts it is that since he decided to bow to the Emperor's command, because again, there has been an option here, but again, it kind of, all of this little interaction is framed by that sense of the cold house, and it kind of ends with the sense of the city feeling cold. And that seems to be a bit jarring for us, isn't it? Because, and it's going to, especially if we compare it to Leto's next statement, it's a dirty, dusty little garrison town. We should be getting a sense of warmth and heat and, this desert planet Dune that we're on, and instead we're getting it feels cold. And I think it's partly her dislocation here, Let me just catch up with some of your comments, folks. Brad says the best way to get someone to do what you want is to let them think it was their idea. Absolutely. That's the art of rhetoric is for that thing, isn't it? Behave, ladies. So it's one of my dogs going woof woof there. Brad says, indicated if the old Duke was alive. Is it indicated if the old Duke was alive at the time of purchase? That may explain why. It says that the picture. You mean the time of purchase of Jessica? Hang on. Let me just have a wee look. That's the devil's in the detail. No, it's she knew there was something symbolic in this action, not since the day when the Duke's buyers had taken her from the school had she felt this frightened and unsure of herself. So it's not the old Duke that's paid for it, it's Leto himself. I was thinking you meant was he alive at the time he got his picture painted? You alright there? Hello, Noodles. Hail. So I noticed her in the background there. Jessica must have been purchased sometime before she fell pregnant with Paul. Yeah, that makes sense. As I cannot believe that any woman trained by the Bene Gesserit would instantly fall in love so deep as to discard their instruction. So we've got to assume that somewhere fundamentally within however the Bene Gesserit work, that Jessica, that the whole being bought, sold to a noble lord to bear his children, be his companion, that all of their training is towards that. And in that sense, that maybe it's just the upheaval, the shock of it all, being pulled from a home. I suppose, but Herbert could write that a different way, if you see what I mean. Like, he doesn't have to mention the Duke spires. And I think as much as she's comparing being uprooted from home once to being uprooted from her first home, her Bene Gesserit home, we didn't need the use of the word buyers there. It brings a whole other level of nastiness, and it should, something should offend our sensibilities about that, as Paul would say, if you see what I mean. That and I think the conversation with Mapes later is a bit more revealing about that. And of course, we're going to get a little bit more about the Duke's buyers as well in a minute or two. So yeah, Leto says it's a dirty, dusty little garrison town, but we'll change that. And that's, I suppose, an Atreides motif. We're going to change stuff. And he kind of scans the room, looks around the room. There are public rooms for state occasions, etc. Talks about the apartments. Steps closer, touches her arm, admires her stateliness, and you might as well talk about the weather, if you see what I mean. And it is quite weird. I don't know. He seems awkward around her, I think. And I kind of almost get a sense that it's probably Jessica that puts him at ease when he's with her, because he doesn't. Well, put it this way: we get he's going to describe some of Jessica's qualities here, but he doesn't seem to share them, I would argue. And so he stepped closer, touched her arm, admiring her stateliness. So the things that Leto admires about his wife, first one is her stateliness, and it gets him to wondering, really, not how's she coping with this? Is there anything I can do for her? But he basically talks about some rooms, goes up and touches her, and then I wonder where she's from, this kind of thing. And he's wondering, he wondered at her unknown ancestry. But it's again, he wondered at her unknown ancestry. Renegade house, perhaps, some black barred royalty. She looked more regal than the Emperor's own blood. So, she can't possibly be a common woman, can she? She's too regal, and she has this sense of stateliness. He's assuming, I suppose, must be bred into her genes. And of course, we talked a wee bit in the previous chapter about the different mysteries of Dune. There are a bunch of them, and here's one of them. So previously, we have a whole bunch of mysteries within Dune. What's happened to Margot Fenring? That's one. Jessica's parentage is a mystery as well. And so I've been kind of trying to make a wee note of the different mysteries, etc. And I actually also made a wee note, guys, that just in terms of the whole not knowing who your parents are, and then having the kind of, oh no, there's kind of almost an inversion. We were talking about the use of different archetypes. With Jessica here, if we could consider her like a hero in this case, then if we think about Oedipus and whom we know who her father is, etc., it's kind of an inversion of that with her. And yeah, it works on a whole lot of levels, doesn't it? Jessica's appearance then is a little bit. Again, we've had both of these characters described before, but we're getting, I suppose, the respective partners' view of each other. And but yeah, we're told that her face is oval. She has hair of polished bronze, eyes set wide, green and clear. She's a small nose. Her mouth is wide and generous. Her figure was good but scant, and she was tall, but with sorry, let me just get this a bit. Tall and with its curves, her figure was good but scant. Tall and with its curves gone to slimness. And you can almost picture this. This is very strange. It's almost out of something like the Dave Allen show or something. He goes up and touches her, and sort of, I wonder where she's from, and off he goes and daydreams. And then it cuts to his fond remembrance of this. He remembered that the lay sisters at the school had called her skinny. So his buyers had told him. And it's almost like a false. For almost a minute, it sounds like he's remembering the sisters telling him, "Oh, she's very skinny." But then it actually wasn't. He wasn't there. They said that to his buyers, and then they said, the sisters said that she's skinny, and that description was oversimplified. She had brought a regal beauty back into the Atreides line. He was glad that Paul favoured her. So again, the Bene Gesserit, we were talking about this earlier, the Bene Gesserit sisters call her skinny. He thinks of her as regal, has a quality of stateliness to her. And again, this is all to do with so his buyers told him. So it kind of makes you think, what did his buyers come and tell him? The Bene Gesserit have got a girl they think you might like, and she's skinny. Sure, that'll do. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. It's all a little bit bizarre. The oversimplified description, as he puts it, I think works on a number of levels there. And we're also told that Paul favors her. So whether that's in physical looks or posture or characteristics, we're not quite too sure. We're assuming, I don't know, assuming it's not his straight lines and his, I don't know, his sense of and Paul's meant to be small for his age, isn't he? Leto's described, I think, as quite tall. Leto's description, his tallness, wood smoke predatory, And I don't think Paul has the kind of hawkishness, and it was an air of disdain to his nose. So there is something of those physical characteristics of his father there. And of course, we finally get the question, where's Paul? We're on a new planet. Have you seen? Again, it's a little bit disingenuous, isn't it? And he hasn't really sort of asked her. All of that kind of goes on in his head. Where's Paul? Not how are you? But where's Paul? He's somewhere around the house taking his lessons with Yui. So Paul's still getting his lessons. And of course, we're all going, as readers, we're forewarned. Oh no, Paul's in real danger here, and he's with the one guy who's, and they all think he's perfectly safe. Oh no! Dear, oh dear. I thought I heard Yui's voice, but I couldn't take the time to look. So again, we're discussing Leto's parenting skills. Not so he just doesn't have the time. He glanced down at her, hesitating. I came here only to hang the key of Castle Caledon Castle in the dining hall. So, and again, if we think back to how excited Paul was to see, is my dad here yet? Where is he going? Is he going to show up? Oh yeah, this kind of thing. And the fact that he's turned up to hang a key, he's not even here to see her. I think it's quite insulting. I think, and I think it's quite nuanced, this little bit here, but I came here. He says he glanced down at her, hesitating. I came here only to hang the key of Caladan Castle in the dining hall. She caught her breath, stopped the impulse to reach out to him, hanging the key. There was finality in that action, but this was not the time or place for comforting. I saw her banner over the house as we came in, she said. Hmm. And he shifts to the painting of the fan. Now, I think it's just holding her breath there. I think it works on a couple of levels. That A, she does see the finality in the action. It means he's hanging up the key to the castle here. This is really it. We're home. We're staying. But I also think that she's kind of calming herself in that sense that he's a bit distant, isn't he? Goodness, I need to drink more fluids, folks. Let me just catch up with your comments here. Let me see. A dirty, dusty little garrison town, says Cynthia, that doesn't match what we've heard about this formerly being the place, the location of the government mansion and the grandeur. Yes. Days of the old empire. Maybe Leto is speaking in a political vein. He is supposed to dislike what has recently been a Harkonnen possession. Does he need to be? Does he need to be political with Jessica? I suppose maybe he does. It was the Imperial Ambassador's residence. Doesn't seem he was there much. Never on Dune at all in this book. Dusty Garrison Town was completely ignored by the Baron in favour of his megalopolis. Yes. I think so. The idea is that the Harkonnens generally don't like living with the locals either. So all the Harkonnens are down in Carthage, if you like. That was their hangout. So I think in terms of flushing out spies, trying to figure out who's who, etc. Bear with me a second. I think where there. Aha, there you go. Bring it back. Sorry, my wife's just looking for something there. Arrakeen's the safer city. It's the native city, I think. And Carthage would possess a lot more risk, I think. Part of the Baron's plan as well, isn't it, that they know the psychology that Leto, that they'll not go to Carthage because it's a Harkonnen city, that they'll choose to go to Arrakeen as well. Excuse me. Cynthia's saying, Chaya, good point. Maybe the Harkonnens were making their own statement by letting the Imperial residence and surrounds go downhill while they built up Carthage. And of course, we're told previously that they don't like wasting their money at all on dealing with the native population. You maybe get the sense that Carthage's maybe like almost Harkonnen only, if you see what I mean. Chaya says, sounds like he didn't see her before she was bought. Misogynist Imperium, but women control most of the important action. Yeah. As I said, interesting. We're having each of these look at the other from their own, from their viewpoint. Jessica, what we got out of Jessica there wasn't really, oh my love, my darling, what a guy, what a strong man, what a great leader. It wasn't that at all. He's a predator. I have a fear of him. There's aspects to his character, I think, that aren't nice at all. And I think Leto's very similar to the Baron as well. I think we'll get that in the detail. But yeah, it's not the Romeo and Juliet love story that we might expect in a kind of romantic, maybe high romance in the old-fashioned sort of sense of the word, science fiction epic like this. He's not as advertised. I think that's the thing, I suppose. And again, how much of these epigraphs, as much as this one was for the Bene Gesserit, the one thing I'll keep pointing out each time is I think that all the epigraphs are some form of propaganda, but for whose benefit? But I think that the sigh here, holding her breath, I think that's twofold there. Maybe she's a bit disappointed that he's not there to see her, but at the same time, the finality of the action, and and of course he seems to shift his attention to things that are, I don't know. I suppose they're important to him, but they're not really that important. So Paul's about someplace, but then it's and I think she's been fretting about this as well. I think as the sort of chapter starts, we're told, I think, isn't she fretting with a little bit of the is it the twine or something like that from the box where the painting is, against the curtain to your right stood the painting of the Duke's father. Wrapping twine hung from it like a fried decoration. A piece of the twine was still clutched in Jessica's left hand. So she's been at this first, and I think that she has this little bit of twine in her hand. She's been worrying at it, and kind of she knows him well enough that this, I think, is going to cause. She's worrying about having a confrontation with him over this painting and this bull's head. And again, we have this fear with her. And that she knows that, I suppose at this point, she knows that this isn't the time, place for comforting him. And you get the sense maybe that she might want to comfort him, but he's distant and businesslike, I think. And of course, he wants to know where are you putting that stuff. And she's about to make a sort of reasoned suggestion here, about the painting in the bull's head. And again, this scene's in the Great Hall. The painting and the bull's head are in here, and she's hoping that this is where they can go. But of course, he wants it to go to the dining room. And we get a flat no from him. Flat and final. Almost like an order. It's not barked. There's no exclamation mark on it. And of course, she realizes that open argument is useless with him. They will hang in the dining room. And she sighed, "Yes, my lord." And of course, we get this as we were mentioning earlier. You may resume your custom of dining in your rooms whenever possible. I shall expect you at your proper position only on formal occasions. Thank you, my lord. And this is an interesting little bit. Don't go all cold and formal on me. Be thankful that I never married you, my dear. Then it'd be your duty to join me at the table for every meal. And she held her face immobile, nodded. And I think that's a kind of gesture that Paul would do. There's quite a bit here again, I think, but and we're going to get into it. She gets, and the way she puts it is that I think is that he uses it in a certain way that his tone is final, I suppose. The word rang flat and final, telling her she could use trickery to persuade, but open argument was useless. And I think that we get a point that she doesn't use trickery on him, and we're having to assume that that's her Bene Gesserit skills. But he wants it in the dining hall, and this is so that everyone can see it while they're eating, which is not, I suppose, and he uses the term, it's the difference between her digestion and his ancestral dignity. So again, the dignity of a lot of dead people who aren't in the room comes before everybody else's comfort, I suppose, of the living when they're eating, is the one way of looking at it. And we get that Jessica's custom, as we were pointing out, is to dine in her own rooms, so that she doesn't. And we get the gist that so that she doesn't have to look at this thing, this grotesquerie. And I don't know about you guys, but we get this little interchange between them, and I think it's Leto trying to be flippant, trying to be joking, and when he says, "Don't go all cold and formal on me. Be thankful that I never married you, my dear." I just see the daggers being stared at him at this point, I think. Then it would be your duty to join me at the table for every meal. And as I said, he's kind of equating never marrying her with because of that, isn't it really good that you don't have to stare at this bull's head all the time? There you go. And I think it's a bizarre one. And her response is, I think, cold, frosty, um, and just she held her face immobile, nodded, and I think it's almost a minimal response to that. And again, I just sort of get the sense of that Leto's a bit of a twat here. Um, I think he almost seems like an awkward teenager himself trying to interact with his wife. Or sorry, not his wife, his concubine. Um, and I don't know, he seems emotionally stunted, if you see what I mean. Yeah, I think that's the term. And well, I think, yeah, I just think he's trying to be a bit joking there, and I don't think it works very well at all. And we get another bit of this strange conversation between the supposed couple, and he tells her, "Well, after this, Howard already has our own poison snooper over the dining table, and there'll be a portable one in your room." And it kind of because the fact that you'll be eating in your room, she kind of wonders, have you anticipated this disagreement? And it's almost as if, did you really kind of, are you that kind of emotionally intelligent that you'd figure this out, that and then I would go and eat in my room, this kind of thing. And it's almost as if I would like to be, but no response. My dear, I think also of your comfort. So he does care for her, apparently. I've engaged servants to to care for you, and they're all locals. But Howard has cleared them; they're Fremen all, and we're told that this will do until our own people can be released from their other duties. So everybody's busy, and we're going to get you some new servants from the locals, but they're all checked out. And again, Jessica sort of questions: can anyone be truly safe here? Everyone's a stranger to them. The response is anyone who hates the Harkonnens. You may even want to keep the head housekeeper, the Shadout Mapes. So we're getting a wee bit of an introduction to the locals here. We've got the Fremen in general, and we're going to meet the Shadout Mapes. And she's the head housekeeper. Leto was saying you might want to keep her based on Duncan's recommendation, really, or how it speaks highly of her based on Duncan's report. So it's kind of we've had she's I suppose the Shadout Mapes has got references at this point, if you like, and we have to assume that Leto has met her as well. So again, we start to get a little bit immersed into the culture of Arrakis, the culture of the Fremen, and we're going to do this through Mapes. And of course, Shadout Mapes is really important in terms of introducing us to the Fremen, to a sense of Arrakis, Fremen beliefs, all sorts of things, I suppose. And in particular, is one of two characters that are quite important. They're not big characters, but they're very important in terms of testing the prophecy. The other one, of course, is Jamis, who invokes the Amtal rule. So this is Mapes testing Jessica's role in the prophecy. Later on, the whole sort of pushiness and aggression of Jamis, the excuse that he'll evoke is the Amtal rule because they want to test the prophecy. So this is the first of two characters that are going to test the prophecy here from the Fremen in relation to Paul and his mother. And we get, again, the banter changes to the local language. Shadout Mapes, Shadout, a Fremen title. I'm told it means well dipper. A meaning with rather important overtones here. She may not strike you as a servant type, although Howard speaks highly of her on the basis of Duncan's report. They're convinced she wants to serve, specifically that she wants to serve you. And Jessica, of course, asks me, and the Fremen have learned that you're Bene Gesserit, he said. There are legends here about the Bene Gesserit. And here we go. So Mapes is into Jessica. She knows that she's a Bene Gesserit and she wants to serve her, and it's got something to do with legends. And of course, this kicks in with Jessica. The missionary are protective have been here, and I think it's quite a groovy little sort of thing. No place escapes them, yeah, this particular branch of the Bene Gesserit are very effective, but no place escapes them. I think it's quite interesting. And so the legends to do with the Bene Gesserit, her own order have placed them here, like they do on almost every planet, to make sure that if something bad happens to one of the Bene Gesserit sisters, that they can manipulate this set of legends or myths and be safe. Is he already enacting this coldness as part of the plan to think he suspects her as the spy? Chronologically, he tells Paul that that's what's afoot the next morning after the attempt on Paul's life. I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. Again, I suppose we'll see it as he's leaving. It's not how he behaves just to Jessica, but it could well be. At the same time, he's also generally quite, I suppose, absent and distant, and going about his business. So it's, I think there is a love side to them, but I'm just in terms of his physicality with her, what's actually being described. Um, you know, and his thought process here about her. I think it's interesting. It's not how I greet my wife in the morning. I wonder where her genetic stock is. This kind of it's. I just how are you, love, that kind of thing. That's how I would say hello. But we do find out a little bit more. Duncan's been over here. As I said, it's kind of his reference that's kind of got Mapes into the household, I suppose. And we get to ask they wish to observe as well. Oh, sorry, not to jump ahead. Does this mean that Duncan was successful? Will the Fremen be our allies? Because that's what he's here to do, to communicate and report on the Fremen. And there's nothing definite, we're told. So Leto says they wish to observe us. Sorry, they wish to observe us for a while. Duncan believes they did, however, promise to stop raiding our outlying villages during a truce period. That's a more important gain than it might seem. How it tells me the Fremen were a deep thorn in the Harkonnen side, that the extent of their ravages was a carefully guarded secret. It wouldn't have helped for the Emperor to learn the ineffectiveness of the Harkonnen military. It's possible I was going to say that maybe the Emperor knows, because maybe that's why he sends along all the Sardaukar. So nothing definite in relation to building up allies with the Fremen yet. But we do know that they've been a deep thorn in the Harkonnen side, and that they've agreed to stop raiding the outlying villages. And we're assuming that these are with villages with Atreides people in it. And of course, we get Jessica wondering about this Fremen housekeeper. Jessica muses, returning to the subject of the Mapes. She'll have the all blue eyes. And again, using the physicality of Mapes, we're going to find out a little bit about the physicality and nature of the Fremen. So what Leto tells us, do not let them deceive us. They have a deep strength about them, healthy vitality, everything we need. And again, we get a little bit of banter back and forth between them. This seems a bit more familiar, but again, I think he's quite dismissive. Jessica basically says it's a dangerous gamble. And again, he's dismissive. Let's not go into that again. She forced a smile. That's a phrase we keep hearing. We are committed. No doubt of that. She went through the quick regimen of calmness, the 2 deep breaths, the ritual thought. Then, when I assign rooms, is there anything special I should reserve for it? So they really are sort of going back and forth business with each other. And but I think what she says there, she forced the smile. We are committed, no doubt of that. And then, it's and as much as we know, maybe she's not that obvious about it. She's Jessica is someone here that suggests to me that she hasn't got confidence in her husband, or sorry, in Leto. Keep wanting to call him husband, don't they? That she's not confident in the plan. That's for sure. She's using her pranabindu techniques to calm herself, be composed. She's forcing the smile. And again, back to business. What about some rooms, etc.? And of course, you must teach me someday how you do that. So they've been together for at least 15 years, and Leto hasn't managed to figure out how to get a bit of breathing exercises from her, but she's managed to teach Paul. Again, I think it's all suggestive of that they're not that close, or maybe it's just the nature of their lives, if you know what I mean. Maybe it's Paul that makes them closer. You must teach me someday how you do that, he said. The way you thrust your worries aside and turn to practical matters, it must be a Bene Gesserit thing. It's a female thing, she said. I think that's an excellent line. And we could almost argue, therefore, that a Bene Gesserit thing equals a female thing, if you like. Lord Kronk says, hello, Lord Kronk. So this is laughing at it. Here's Jessica passing off her Bene Gesserit skills as just feminine to deflect Leto from her powers. Evidence for this is a deliberate strategy. Yes, she doesn't. We get the general gist that she could just, I'll have that bull's head up in the Great Hall and enough, Leto, and he would just go, yes, dear. The was it her trickery is the way that she describes it, isn't it? And yeah, it's a female thing. It is deflection. I totally agree. And there's X amount of it with Jessica and Leto, I think, but there's also stuff that she won't do to him, I think, and that shows that she genuinely does care for him. But it's again, and again, Paul cares for his father. Jessica cares for Leto. But it's more of a question of how much does he care back, or how much time does he have to care? And I suppose there's also when everybody's going about with false appearances and I have a great word for you if you like. It's to be an echidentesiast. Isn't that a great word? Echidentesiast is a person with a fake smile. Behold my teeth, isn't it? In Latin, echidentesiast. What a great word. How do you know that? There must be a certain sort of doubt about emotions and motives within the relationship sometimes, I think. Especially when he's sort of trying to be, I don't know, I thought the whole, you should thank me for not marrying you, I thought that was like a smack in the face to her, I have to say. Again, just the way I read it, but it results in this immobile face, just staring. Put it this way, I don't think Leto's as witty as he thinks. Oh dear, where are we, folks? Let's see. So yeah, and as you say, a bit of deflection there. Bene Gesserit, it's more of a female thing. As I said, I think they're the same actually, but yeah, and I suppose a lot of the thought processes do go from the kind of the real emotional worries and quandaries to the business of running the household, don't they? What actually comes out of their mouths isn't necessarily what's going on in their minds. So you have a little bit of a banter about how its men have got the house, the security's all sorted. I'm sure they have, etc. And I always thought that was possibly condescending from her, that the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Moham walked through how it's security no bother last time, So yeah, we have a wee bit of a chat about assignment of rooms and adjusting the timepieces to Arrakeen local. And of course, we get this little statement from, can't you get, just in terms of business, can't you get Howard to do it? You look so tired. And of course, we talked previously about the effort that Leto was taking to hide his tiredness. So he's not hiding it from her. And I suppose the question is again with her Bene Gesserit training, would Leto be able to hide his tiredness? Can he hide his feelings or his emotions from her in any particular way? And possibly, I think. Chaya says it's a Bene Gesserit thing. She lies easily to him, and he believes, even though he was right. Again, Leto is naive and shielded by those around him. Yeah. Aye. What's real sense of, I suppose, yeah. I don't know. But there's also a sense of his own self, if you like, if you know what I mean. He's confident in himself, I think. But as much as you're saying he's naive and shielded by those around him, we've also been told that everybody's warned him. If remember, if we go back a bit, Chaya, remember Bene Gesserit's warned him, your mother's warned him, Howlett's warned him, everybody's warned him. So there has to be something pig-headed about Leto, I think. Narrow of focus, maybe. What was it that Jessica, how she described her fears there previously? Savage but driving. You know. He's maybe not taking time to smell the roses, if you see what I mean. Right, let's see where we were. Yeah, so, and of course, as I said, he's not even here to see her. He's here to hang up a key. He glanced at his wristwatch. There we go. You know, as you might see, and you might see that all our timepieces are adjusted for Arrakeen local, etc., etc. He brushed a strand of her hair back from her forehead. I must return to the landing field now. The second shuttle's due any minute with my staff reserves. Couldn't have it, mate, the Millard. You look so tired. And he's letting us know that, Howard's a lot busier than we are. And again, that level of intimacy between them, it's a touch and a light touch. We've got Harkonnen intrigues we're told about, and we're also told about spice hunters, which sounds interesting and mysterious. And Leto must try to persuade some of these trained spice hunters against leaving. And we get a little bit of info on this, that because there's first of all, let's note the planetologist, the Emperor, and the Landsraad installed as judge of the change cannot be bought. And it's the planetologist, Dr. Kynes. So it's an interesting little thing about him. He can't be bought. In relation to the spice hunters, we're told in relation to the change of Fife that the spice hunters can legally choose an option to stay whenever a change of Fife goes about. And I suppose in that sense, change Fife, change loyalty. And that as part of the judge being judge of the change, they're saying that the planetologist cannot be bought, and because of that, because nobody's paid him off, he's allowing the spice hunters the option to change their Fife, and so he's got potentially, because Liet Kynes hasn't been bribed or is unbribable, it's actually opened up a bit of a labour pool for Leto, and he's going to try and intercept these guys before they get on a guild shuttle. So that's his business, I suppose. And where are we? I think the other interesting thing there is just to remind us that the Judge of the Change is installed by the Emperor and the Landsraad. And I think it's often presented to us that the Judge of the Change is really there just by the Emperor. But he's there to keep an eye on things, I suppose, and make sure all the forms go ahead and innocents aren't hurt, I think is the key thing, isn't it? Excuse me. Now, we get a rather little interesting interchange of their thoughts and words, don't we? At this point, my lord, she broke off, hesitating. Yes. And then her thoughts. He will not be persuaded against trying to make this planet secure for us, she thought, and I cannot use my tricks on him. So that's the thinking. At what time will you be expecting dinner? She asked. And really does show you how the Bene Gesserit work on a couple of different levels. And then his thoughts on this. That's not what she was going to ask, he thought. Ah, my Jessica. Would that we were somewhere else, anywhere away from this terrible place, alone, the two of us, without a care. I'll eat in the officers' mess at the field, he said. Don't expect me until very late. And I'll be sending a guard car for Paul. I want him to attend our strategy conference. So there you go. And it's kind of oh, I love she's gorgeous. If only we could be somewhere else. Yes, I'll have dinner in the mess hall. And it's kind of funny the way neither's sort of saying what they want to, I suppose. And that they're able to seem to read each other in that sense. He's aware enough that she's not asking what she was going to. And I suppose just the two of us, that maybe there is a bit of romance to him. Maybe he does truly love her. And as much maybe we don't doubt his love for him, maybe it's just about how he shows it, I suppose. I'm going to hit pause here a wee second, folks, because I really need to blow my nose. I'm so bunged up. And yeah, I'm going to run to the loo very quickly. Give me a couple of seconds. I'll be right back. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. I got a wee sip of honey there from my throat as well. My throat's starting to get a bit scratchy doing this. But Lulu skipped a Maloo, my darling, yesterday. Excuse me. Gotta watch those precious bodily fluids. Peterson Kynes is John the Baptist, the prophet who recognizes the Messiah. Cynthia says, I have to go. We'll listen to the rest of the discussion later. No worries, Cynthia. Thank you very much for joining us. Chai is saying bye-bye, Cynthia. Skip to loo time. Kynes recognizes the dangers of a Messiah figure to his people. Eastwood. Excuse me. I think the interesting thing, whenever we'll have a look at Kynes later, is whenever we've got to the end of this book, and we have a look at the first appendix, and we get a sense of Pardo and Leat Kynes and what they're about. I think in that sense, Kynes and the two Kynes men have prepared the way for Paul, and that they've been able to use the Bene Gesserit myths, if you like, from the Panoplia Propheticus, to actually get their ecological goals. So they're people who I view as using the Fremen very badly. Strange love. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got here. I'll tell you what, I've been trying to figure out a couple of films I've found just to watch, I suppose. Looking for a couple of sci-fi comedies to show my wife that she hasn't seen, old ones. And the two DVDs that I brought up, Doctor Strangelove, the other one was Dark Star. So thinking of having a bit of a nosy at that. Ooh, ping pong, excuse me. Sorry about that. Well, I probably should throw that in just in case I should have left my phone out. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Excuse me. So, and I'm getting a cup of coffee. It's all happening. Thank you very much, love. Thanks. That's better. And I've got another doggy, and oh goodness, time of scampering. So yeah, we're also, again, I suppose it does show us that Leto has real feelings for Jessica, and we're also told he's and I suppose the thing about it is if only we could be, go alone, the two of us somewhere. They could have went, I suppose, rogue and all avoided this very obvious dangerous trap, which Jessica thinks is a dangerous gamble, I think. And of course, she must know that he's not coming through this, I suppose, at this point. And at this point, yeah, I suppose we get to the point where we get to see Leto leave here. So we find out that Paul's going to be attending a strategy meeting. He's going to eat in the mess. And then here's how he cleared his throat as though to say something else. Then, without warning, turned and strode out, headed for the entry where she could hear more boxes being deposited. His voice sounded once from there, commanding and disdainful. The way he always spoke to servants when he was in a hurry. The Lady Jessica's in the Great Hall. Join her there immediately. And then the outer door slammed. Hello, Holly. What's that? Go play. Go on. Sorry, another doggy's just come in. They've all got bath today. So, again, he just sort of takes off, does Leto. And the boxes, we were talking about the boxes and how the boxes frame all the action, and that's they're just the coming and goings of the moving house here, if you like. But again, building upon what we know of Leto, he strode out, and this is the interesting thing is before, whenever we talked about all the different characters, how they come into a room, we didn't kind of get a description of him entering because it kind of the soldiers kind of did it for him, if you like. This is kind of where we get a sense of him going through a door for the first time. And of course, he's going to slam it, isn't he? He turned and strode out. We hear the voice in the distance. It's commanding. It's disdainful. And we're told this is the way he always spoke to servants when he's in a hurry. And then we get the outer door slammed. And I think this is quite a funny wee bit, but I've just written there, I think he's a bit of a shit. That's on my own notes there. I'm not admiring whether he's under stress, etc. He's not behaving like, as I said, he's not behaving the way he's been sold so far. How much of it? It just doesn't come across that way, I think. And we get a nice little bit here where, again, of course, this back to this out of painting. Jessica turned away, faced the painting of Leto's father. We get a wee bit of info, a wee bit of fleshing out, a wee bit of mythopoeia, if you like, of the Dune universe. It had been done by the famed artist Albé during the old Duke's middle years. He was portrayed in a matador costume with a magenta cape flung over his left arm. The face looked hardly older than Leto's now, and with the same hawk features, the same grey stare. She clenched her fists and her sides glared at the painting. Damn you, damn you, damn you, she whispered. What are your orders, noble? And in terms of it's the sneaky arrival of the Shadout Mapes, I think, which is quite good. But it's kind of in contrast to we've heard Leto shouting at her basically outside. And in terms of the fact that she's arriving now, and say join her immediately, commanding and disdainful the way he spoke to servants and then slammed the door. Well, that was Mapes who he was speaking to, and that's how he spoke to her. And it's distracted Jessica. The painting's distracted her. They end up it's kind of swearing under her breath, to the point where Mapes is right next to her. So Mapes is able to, of all the people that have entered rooms and gone through doors in Dune, and I think it's a thing that Frank does, and he uses this kind of whatever for whatever reason, tells us a wee bit about their character. Mapes has come in silently and unnoticed, in the wake, I suppose, of Leto's door slamming. Oh dear. And of course, what are your orders, noble born? And the woman's voice thin and stringy. And I suppose we get our description of Mapes straight away. And of course, Jessica whirls, again, that sort of circular motion that she does. It's often a descriptor of her. And she stares down at this knobby, grey-haired woman in a shapeless sack dress of bondsman brown. The woman looked as wrinkled and desiccated as any member of the mob that had greeted them along the way from the landing field that morning. So we know that they arrived that morning. And Jessica thought, and every native she had seen on the planet, Jessica thought, looked prune dry and undernourished. Yet Leto had said they were strong and vital. In this case, Leto's correct, isn't he? And there were the eyes, of course, that wash of deepest, darkest blue without any white, secretive, mysterious. Jessica forced herself not to stare. The woman gave a stiff-necked nod and said, I am called the Shadout Mapes, nobleborn. What are your orders? And so we get this great introduction to Mapes. That's kind of where did you come from? From Jessica. And she gives her a good once over with her eyes, and again describes the character for us. Once again, we saw very little of this character in the new film. And I think it's a shame. I think Mapes is another great character. And the stiff nod, I suppose, the stiff neck nod's unusual to her. This, I suppose, in finding out a bit about Mapes, we get to draw a little bit about Jessica from this as well. And we get a bit of it's a strange kind of there's almost a Q&A going on with the two of them, a bit of back and forth, if you see what I mean. And you get the sense that there's something cheeky about Mapes, that the sort of glint in the eye, that kind of thing. And of course, Jessica corrects Mapes in terms of how to address her. So maybe the nod's fine, but the title nobleborn is incorrect. And Jessica says, you may refer to me as my lady. I'm not nobleborn. I'm the bound concubine of the Duke Leto. Pardon me. And we get this, and again, bound concubine. That's what I am. Again, that strange nod. And the woman peered up at Jessica with a sly, questioning, there's a wife then? And there is not, nor has there ever been. I am the Duke's only companion, the mother of his heir designate. So it's a funny little interchange. And it does tell us about, I suppose, a lot about the society, how women are treated. And we have this interaction between two women. And I suppose the fact that Jessica's not nobleborn, maybe that's what makes Mapes a little bit more, bit more chummy, if you like, a bit more overly friendly than she should be, I suppose. But of course, we know that Jessica's already been told that Mapes wants to serve her, and that it's to do with the legend. So there's a bit of manipulation going on here from probably both parties. And I suppose her response is there is not, there's not a wife, nor has there ever been. But it doesn't end with nor shall there be, I suppose, if you think about it. And we get this little Jessica sort of looking over her own response here. Even as she spoke, Jessica laughed inwardly at the pride behind her words. And she goes with, was it Saint Augustine said, she asked herself, the mind commands the body and it obeys. The mind orders itself and meets resistance. Yes, I am meeting more resistance lately. I could use a quiet retreat by myself. She could do with a break. And what she's quoting St. Augustine of Hippo there. Is it City of God? Probably. There's a book, I've got a copy of that book somewhere in this house, and I know it, not really much of an interest to read it, I have to say. Probably would read it for work purposes, but not otherwise, I think. It's too big. It's enormous. Yeah, I'm taking myself a bit too seriously here. Listen to me. The pride I have in not being this man's wife, that kind of thing. So a bit of self-deprecation as she's berating herself, but I think she's almost finding it amusing. And we get a weird, again, some of the noises from the household are interrupting again. We get a cry from outside this time, and again, we're starting, just landed on this new planet. We're starting to get some new sounds, new smells and sights, etc. New people with blue within blue eyes. China says Fifth Element and The Last Starfighter, plenty of humor in both. That's a good pair. Yeah, excellent pair of films there. Woody Allen's Sleeper. Haven't seen Sleeper in years, but it's a good one. Young Frankenstein's arguably my favorite comedy, I would say. I like Young Frankenstein, and my other real favorite is the Man with Two Brains. Chaya, I think. But Young Frankenstein, the Man with Two Brains, they're pretty much, I'd say, arguably my favorite movie comedies. Jessica had her back to the door. Young Frank was Mel Brooks. Yes, yes, it was. Yeah, there's a few science fiction comedies about. Of course, we've got The Hitchhiker's Guide and Old Harry's Game on radio as well. I'd almost argue that Ian Banks's Matter reads a bit like a comedy sometimes. But yeah, do like a good sci-fi comedies aren't that... Red Dwarf, I suppose, is a good one. But in terms of films, wouldn't be that many, would there? Excuse me. Yeah. Let's figure it out. Okay, yeah, have to have a look at it. I'm trying to get some films to watch at the minute, and but my wife's missed out on a lot of sort of old-fashioned films. I'm thinking about maybe getting some of the old RKOs, things like King Kong and stuff like that. Who knows? But yeah, I think is there a Last Starfighter remake coming soon? I think. Dear oh dear. So yeah, we get the cry, this weird cry sounding from outside, and it's repeated su su suk, and then ikut a, and again su su suk. What is that again? So the sound sort of permeates into the Great Hall, and again, we're getting a little sort of backstory. I've heard it several times as we drove through the streets this morning. That's another thing that's missing from, I think, Danny Villeneuve's version, is streets. Dear oh dear. So of course, this again, we're starting to get immersed in Arrakis, and this is the cry of the water sellers. The word souk, I think, means the market, isn't it? But it's the ikut a, that's if we have a look at it in the back of the book. Ikute is the cry of the water seller. Etymology uncertain, I think, is what it says there. By the way, in the back of the terminology of the Imperium, and again, something similar to what Mapes is teaching Jessica a little bit here about Arrakis, but this is something very similar to what Yui said to Paul previously. The thing that made Yui the what actually made Paul a bit miffed, I think, was that Yui was telling, "Oh, you'll not be intermingling with these. You don't need to worry about that." This is a similar kind of thing. You've no need to. It's a water seller, my lady, but you've no need to interest yourself in such as they. Why? Well, the cistern here holds 50,000 litres and it's always kept full. And she glanced down at her dress. Why, you know, my lady, I don't even have to wear my still suit here. And she cackled, and me not even dead. And that's, again, an interesting... See, I think Mapes is a fascinating wee character. And she's joking about, look at me, I don't have to wear a still suit. Look, I'm not even dead. Which is suggestive that within her culture, only the dead don't need still suits, I suppose. So her humour is quite grim, I think. And of course, we've got a mention of this thing, the still suit. And I don't think, have we had a chance to look at it yet? Of course, we all know what the still suit is, if or some of us maybe not too familiar, if we're new to the book, seen it in the film. But of course, a few entries with the word still. But still suit is a body enclosing garment invented on Arrakis. Its fabric is a micro sandwich performing functions of heat dissipation and filter for bodily wastes. Reclaimed moisture is made available by tubes from the catch pockets. So there we go. That's what she's talking about, this strange thing. And again, water sellers. We've got water sellers here. We've got still suits, the cry of the water seller. And I suppose even an association with not even the dead, with ritual, ritual funerary practices, that kind of thing. There's something to do with the dead and water. And of course, it would all be quite, culturally, lost on Jessica, I suppose. And again, I suppose Jessica hesitated, wanting to question this Fremen woman, needing data to guide her. But bringing order of the confusion in the castle was more imperative. Still, she found the thought unsettling that water was a major mark of wealth here. So again, the main thing, again, Jessica's unsettled. This chapter starts off with her, all of these things that she's frightened, unsure of herself. She has a sense of foreboding. She's unsettled. All of this is sort of giving us a sense that she is on edge. And again, is it just to do with the stress of moving house, which is across planets and so on? And not really. We get a sense that it's much more than that. Now, let's see where we're at. So, and again, yeah, we get this sort of back and forth here between Jessica and Mapes, and I think it's quite funny. My husband told me of your title, Shadout, Jessica said. I recognize the word. It's a very ancient word. So this is answered with a question. So you know the ancient tongues then? Mapes asked, and she waited with an odd intensity. So she's not getting an answer. Mapes is giving another question back. Little Shop of Horrors, yeah, that would be one. Matter as a comedy. Time for a reread. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Well, I'll tell you what. Both versions of Little Shop, both Ghostbusters, of course. Something. Yes, Galaxy Quest. There we go. We're finding plenty of them, aren't we? Good for you. Yeah, Galaxy Quest is excellent. I thought Matter was a comedy, and I thought it was almost the culture does Monty Python. I thought I got a real sense of it in that sense. Yeah, I've got an audiobook of it there. I keep meaning to point this out and not finding it, but it's here. Actually, it's an abridged version. Let's see. There we go. Ian Banks' Matters, what we're talking about. This is Hatchet Audio, and it's read by Toby Longworth. That's 5 CDs, 6 hours, that one. I thought it was pretty funny, but I don't listen to too many audiobooks, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you what, folks, by the way, I just got the other day in the post, just to show you, I got my copy of Women's Agency in the Dune Universe by Dr. Cara Kennedy. What a really nice book. Really good binding and stuff on it. So really looking forward to piling through that. And I'm delighted to say I've got a nice little signed dedication, which I'm delighted with. To Ross, my fellow Dune doctor, thank you for helping me launch this, Cara Kennedy. So another Dune book for the shelf. Plonk it there. There we go. I must say, if anybody's interested in that, you can find details of that over at dunescholar.com. But you can it is an academic book, but we're just saying, as always, you can get your local library to order it for you. That's kind of one of the ways that those books work. But yeah, delighted with that. Really, really chuffed. Nice to get a book in the post. So we've got this wee back and forth between Mapes and Jessica. It's quite a revealing little thing. But of course, so Jessica decides to answer her. But you know the ancient tongues, and this is Mapes testing the prophecy, really, isn't it? Tongues of the Bene Gesserit's first learning. I know the Muad'Dib and the Chakobsa, all the hunting languages. And Mapes nodded, just as the legend says. So we have to assume that Jessica's in mode of the missionary protectiva here, and that as now that she's aware that there's legends here, it's time to tick the boxes basically, and hope that she can do so correctly. So the odd intensity, tongues of the Bene Gesserit's first learning, so languages, and just as and I think what's quite interesting that this Jessica goes, why do I play out this sham? But but the Bene Gesserit ways are devious and compelling, and it's almost like why am I bothered playing this role? Devious and compelling, but she goes for it anyway. And then I know starts to present the dark side of this, if you like. I know the dark things, the ways of the Great Mother. Jessica said she read the more obvious signs in Mapes' action and appearance, the petty betrayals. Mrs. Prigia, she said in the Chakobsa tongue, Andral tre pera, trada sic buscacri, Mrs. Peracri. Mapes took a backward step, appeared poised to flee. So she's speaking in this mysterious language that this person Mapes apparently understands. And if we have a wee nosy, let's have a look. Chakobsa, at the back of the terminology of the Imperium, is the so-called magnetic language derived in part from the ancient Botani Jib meaning dialect, a collection of ancient dialects modified by needs of secrecy, but chiefly the hunting language of the Botani, the hired assassins of the First War of Assassins. So there we go. Lots of different types of languages in the Dune universe. Talk about battle languages and cants and things like that. So it's ticking the boxes. She's presenting knowledge, and this is all to do with whether she'll be the Reverend Mother that the legend seeks, etc. And she's able to sort of, and she's kind of invoking dark things there, the darker side of, maybe the more sort of weird, superstitious things that kind of makes Mapes want to flee. And she kind of identifies a few facts about Mapes. Mapes has had children. She's lost loved ones. She's hidden in fear. She's done violence and will do more violence, we're told. And she doesn't take any offense at any of this. Sorry. A low voice Mapes says, I meant no offense, my lady. And of course, Jessica's saying, you speak of the legend and seek answers. Beware, etc., and then identifies again through reading, the minutiae of observation that the Bene Gesserit have, identifies that Mapes has got a weapon on it. And of course, little threats come out, I suppose. Basically, Jessica pretty much tells her, if you kill me, a fate worse than death will befall pretty much all your people. It's a kind of a hyperbolic threat towards Mapes. But she says there are worse things than dying, even for an entire people. And I suppose it's almost arguably what you would call a spiritual threat, isn't it? A metaphysical threat, I think. And of course, we find out that this weapon is meant to be my lady Mapes pleaded. She appeared about to fall to her knees. The weapon was sent as a gift to you, should you prove to be the one. And of course, Jessica realizes, and as the means of my death, should I prove otherwise. So it's a two-edged thing, literally, where one of them's okay and one of them's not, I suppose. I thought matter was deadly serious. Perhaps the reader makes it comedic. I thought it is serious, but it's still funny, I think. I knew there was a reason you've been offline all week. Oh, my throat has been hammered, guys. To be honest with you, I was going to go online on Friday to do my Sci-Fi Friday, so we genuinely left it because and our cooker exploded. So no, sorry about that we didn't do our Sci-Fi Friday or Saturday this week. But as you can probably tell, each one of these ends up being about 3.5 hours long. Excuse me. I do my fair bit of talking and tutoring throughout the day, so it's just my throat was getting a bit of a battering to the point where I could hardly speak on Friday. I was very hoarse, indeed, very croaky. But otherwise, normally we'll try to get back on as usual. And we're working away at a few wee bits and pieces this week, actually. So hopefully we'll have a bunch of stuff for you next week. If you don't mind going a bit of a body comedy parody, give Flesh Gordon a go if you can find it. I've got Flesh Gordon on the computer. I've got Flesh Gordon too, as well. I will tell you that the character names. What is it you call the Han Zarkov character in Flesh Gordon? Is it Dr. Flexi Jerkoff? Is that it? I think, and I think that's the one of the greatest daft names in a stupid film ever. Reading June Scholar, I think. Baz Bell, Spaceballs, one of Mel's best. Yes, that's a good one, I have to say. As long as you give me the thing. Mm-hmm. Oh dear, where are we? Right. Sci-fi comedies. There was something I was thinking on, but no, it's not. It popped out of my head. I think Barbarella's a pretty good film. I think it's pretty funny as well. Is it David Hemmings and that? You all right there, Noodles? When I watched The Good Way Back, that wasn't funny at all. Was it Space Truckers? I didn't think that was very good. Who's that? That's Oh, do you know what? I'll try and blot it out of my head. I think it was pretty bad. I think I remember seeing it the first time, and somebody told me I think it was based loosely on Ace Truck and Co. from 2080 or something like that. So the weapon's a gift if Jessica is the one. Of course, we're talking about all these. Everybody's the one these days, aren't we? And it's her death if she's not. And there's another little thing here that I think is quite interesting about the. Just gives us a little detail about the Bene Gesserit, almost as an aside. She waited in the seeming relaxation that made the Bene Gesserit trained so terrifying in combat. So apparently the Bene Gesserit are very relaxed in combat, and that scares people quite badly. I think it's quite funny. Of course, we get the description then. Slowly, Mapes reached into the neck of her dress and brought out a dark sheath. The knife. This is the knife. This is the Chris knife. A black handle with deep fingered ridges protruded from it. She took sheath in one hand, handle in the other, withdrew milk white blade and held it up. The blade seemed to shine and glisten with a light of its own. It was double edged like a Kindle. Oh, and the blade was perhaps 20 centimeters long. So we get a little bit of description about the weapon. There we go. So it's got a black sheath, black handle, deep finger ridges protruding, milk white blade. It's double edged, and the blade is 20 centimeters long. And of course, do you know this, my lady? And of course, the question's labelled. And Jessica's, I suppose, Jessica's thoughts are sort of laid bare a bit here. It could only be one thing. Jessica knew the fabled Chris knife of Arrakis, the blade that had never been taken off the planet and was known only by rumour and wild gossip. Oh, excuse me, tickly nose. So it's a Chris knife, she said. And of course, say it not lightly, Mapes said, do you know its meaning? So the interesting thing, I suppose, about its meaning. Oh, I got such a tickly nose. Excuse me, folks. From my point of view, a Chris in a blade is a wavy shaped blade, like a wave pattern. Good example of one. Let me see. If anybody's ever seen Ralph Bakski's Lord of the Rings cartoon, the sword that Boromir carries in it is a Chris blade. It's a big two-handed wavy sword, if you like a wave pattern. That's what I understand as a Chris type blade. And of course, it's a loaded question, and it's about, well, I suppose, yeah, it's a Chris name, but do you know what it means? And we get this little run through within Jessica's thought process here. And again, an edge to the question, no pun intended, etc. And of course, here's the reason this Fremen has taken service with me, to ask that one question. And she goes through the sort of meaning of the I suppose, linguistic meaning, the meaning of knife. She's called the Shadout in Chakobsa tongue. Knife, that's Deathmaker in Chakobsa. She's getting restive. I must answer now. Delay is as dangerous as the wrong answer. And Jessica says it's a maker. And this sets off Mapes here. She wails, gives a sound of grief, and elation trembles so hard that the knife blade sends glistening shards of reflection shooting around the room. Excuse me. So the word maker, and I suppose this is quite an interesting thing. It's quite important when it comes to dealing with Frank Herbert, I suppose. We've talked about the biography of, or not the biography, I suppose, where is it? There we are. All right. The maker of Dune. There we go. This book on Frank Herbert here. Definitive Guide to the Life Work of Science Fiction's Grandest Creator. Insights of a Master of Science Fiction. So, maker is quite an important word with Frank and with Dune in general, I suppose, and works on a few different levels, I think. Let me see. Maker. And I've made a wee sort of note here that I think oh, hang on a second. I think I've jumped ahead on my page here. There we are. Yes, indeed. So she had, this is the thing, Jessica says it's a maker, but it wasn't what she intended to say. And we're told that she intended to say the knife was a maker of death, and then add the ancient word. But every sense warned her now the deep training of alertness that exposed meaning in the most casual muscle twitch. The key word was maker, maker, maker. So obviously an important word. And of course, this goes on. Mapes held the knife as they were ready to use it. Jessica said, did you know that I, knowing the mysteries of the Great Mother, would not know the maker? etc. My Lady 101 has lived with prophecy so long, the moment of revelation is a shock. Now, what we get next then is Jessica thinks about the prophecy. The Sharia and all of the Panoplia Propheticus, Bene Gesserit of the Missionaria Protectiva, dropped here long centuries ago, long dead, no doubt. But her purpose accomplished the protective legends implanted in these people against the day of a Bene Gesserit's need, and well, that day had come. So we get a bit more about the blade then at this point, and this is quite insightful. I suppose lets us know a little bit more about the Fremen, their weapons, and I suppose Arrakis, and even a bit about the worms, maybe. So it's an unfixed blade. Keep it near you. More than a week away from flesh, and it begins to disintegrate. It's yours, a tooth of Shai Halud, for as long as you live. And Jessica reached out her right hand, wrist the gamble. Mapes, you sheathed that blade unblooded. Of course, this is, I suppose, some cultures have this. If you draw a blade, you can't put it back until it's sheathed blood, this kind of thing. Mapes dropped the sheath knife into Jessica's hand, tore open the brown ballast, wailing, "Take the water of my life." Now, I suppose we've got this invocation of Shai Halud there. It's a tooth of Shai Halud. And I'm not sure if we've heard it mentioned yet already. Shai Halud is the sandworm of Arrakis, the old man of the desert, old father eternity, and grandfather of the desert. Significantly, this name, when referred to in a certain tone or written with capital letters, designates the earth deity of Fremen hearth superstitions. Sandworms grow to enormous size. Specimens longer than 400 meters have been seen in the deep desert and live to a great age unless slain by one of their fellows or drowned in water, which is poisonous to them. Most of the sand on Arrakis is credited to sandworm action. See Little Maker. And of course, Little Maker says the half plant, half animal, deep sand vector of the Arrakis sandworm. The Little Maker's excretions form the pre-spice mass. So we're starting to find a little bit of stuff out here. And of course, Little Maker, half plant, half animal, and its excretions, its poo, basically, creates the pre-spice mass, creates whatever it is that exists before we get spice. That's part of our life cycle of the sandworm there. Must be blooded, Chris Ness. She must have a moisture catch. Well, we get this wee thing here, this bit of speculation about the blade, don't we? All right. The thing I was going to point out, I suppose, is in terms of the word maker. So, I suppose the Greek verb to make is for poiesis. In a sense, how would I put it? This. I suppose Shakespeare's the bard, isn't he? But Homer's the poet, if you like. And poetry, in the old sense of that word, would be something made. So, in a kind of sense, whenever we're talking about some forms of ancient literature, if you're in the Greek world, poetry kind of covers everything, if you see what I mean. You could argue it's another term for, but it's something made, really, something. And the word maker has an association, I think, strongly with poiesis. And I think if you think about even mythopoeia, that part of that word there, and it's just something I just wanted to point out, but we'll probably see a wee bit more of it. And I always thought it was interesting that that's this book here was sort of edited by Timothy O'Reilly. And it's just got all sorts of things. I always thought it was an interesting title. And the maker of Dune, you could argue, could be translated as the poet of Dune, if you like. So we've got a whole bit about this blade here. Excuse me. And of course, Jessica sort of going with the probably, I think it's a guess here, probably that blade needs to be sheathed. It creates this situation. And where I suppose Jessica gives Mapes a scratch, but it allows her to have a wee look at the blade itself. We've been told it's unfixed, it's a tooth of Shai Hulud, etc. And then take the water of my life. She's offering her blood here. So again, there's what looks like there's an association with blood and water. So the other thing is, just before she cuts Mapes, she says that she saw a fear greater than death panic come over the woman. And I'm just wondering, is that some kind of spiritual fear, religious fear? And then poison in the point, Jessica wondered. She tipped up the point, drew a delicate scratch with the blade's edge above Mapes's left breast. There was a thick welling of blood that stopped almost immediately. Ultra fast coagulation, Jessica thought. A moisture-conserving mutation? So she's not too sure. But she thinks it's possible one, the blade either has something on it that's like a poison that causes really quick coagulation of the blood, or she suspects that it's actually possibly a mutation of the Fremen. So she's wondering, has Mapes handed her a poison blade, or is Mapes a mutant, basically, like other Fremen? Oh, sorry, and therefore the Fremen, would they be similar? And of course, this ends up with quite an interesting little statement. I think it's a very, very important statement, guys. She sheathed the blade and said, "Button your dress, Mapes." Mapes obeyed, trembling. The eyes without white stared at Jessica. "You are ours," she muttered. "You're the one." Now, that's very possessive, isn't it? That she is indeed the one, that she belongs to the Fremen now. And I just thought it's a very interesting way of putting it. And of course, we get some more of these crates moving to allow us to sort of shift our attention a little bit. Another sound of unloading in the entry. And this distraction kind of allows Mapes' behaviour to give us a bit more information about this knife, if you like. That swiftly, Mapes grabbed the sheathed knife, concealed it in Jessica's bodice. "Who sees that knife must be cleansed or slain," she snarled. "You know that, my lady." And of course, Jessica is, "Well, I know it now, because you told me." And I think there's a wee bit of humour in that as well. Of course, Mapes tells us a little bit more. The uncleansed who've never seen a knife may not, the uncleansed who have seen a crisp knife are not allowed to leave Arrakis alive. Never forget that, my lady. And she's been told she's been entrusted with a crisp knife. And in the last little bit, "Now the thing must take its course. It cannot be hurried." And a bit like the conversation previously with Leto and Jessica, they kind of almost back to business here, aren't they? She glanced at the stacked boxes. There's work aplenty to be done. And of course, Jessica realizes at this point that Mapes' words here are an exact quote from Missionary Protective, aren't they? The thing must take its course. And there's something about it. The specific catchphrase from the Missionary Protective stock of incantations, it translates to this: "the coming of a Reverend Mother to free you." And this realization, but she goes, "Oh no, hang on, I'm not a Reverend Mother. How would that? Uh-oh." And it's kind of, oh no. And again, we pointed out how Leto looks at this place, a hideous place, wasn't it, earlier? Here's Jessica echoing those same words. This is to do with, oh no, they've planted that one here. And we kind of wonder, what is the specifics of that myth that they've planted? But this must be a hideous place. And so whatever the assumption is that there's a myth that's been planted in particularly dangerous places, and it's used in particularly dangerous places. And if you've arrived on a planet and you hear that myth is in place, it's a kind of indicator to any Bene Gesserit that you're up to your neck in it, and this is a bad place. Mm. And so we have this realization from Jessica. She's really not having a good day, is she? It's just fearfulness and change, and knowing Leto's not making particularly good decisions. Here's her strange woman in her household with a knife ready to possibly kill her if she doesn't say the right thing. It's been a bit of a day, and she's been commenting as well. She could do with a break, couldn't she? So she's not a Reverend Mother, but this tells her this must be a hideous place. And we kind of almost get a return to the kind of domestic nature of the household, if you like. And it's sort of matter of fact, practicality, if you like, with Mapes. What do you be wanting me to do first, my lady? And instinct warns Jessica to match that casual tone, as if nothing's happened. That we've dealt with prophecy. Thing must attend to itself. Now, shall we get on with packing these boxes? As if nothing's happened, really. So the painting of the old Duke over there, it must be hung on one side of the dining hall. The bull's head must go on the wall opposite of the painting. So the Duke and the bull are forever facing each other, I suppose, as part of that. And I think Mapes' interest in the bull, what a great beast it must have been to carry such a head. Again, we have to assume, would Mapes have ever seen a bull? And she's about to clear it, and we kind of get a response, clean it, and we get a response from Jessica that's also similar to what Leto said earlier, just this flat no. And we're told that there's dirt on the horns, but of course it's not dirt. And that the blood of our Duke's father is actually what's on the horns. The horns were sprayed with a transparent fixative within hours after this beast killed the old Duke. Mapes stood up. No, she said. It's just blood, Jessica said. Old blood at that. Get some help hanging these now. These beastly things are heavy. And of course, Mapes said, do you think that blood bothered me? I'm in the desert. I've seen blood aplenty. But I suppose this is kind of wasted blood, isn't it? And it's also caked and dried and has been preserved. And I'm not too sure whenever she's going, no, is that an exclamation about the blood, or the fact that the bull has killed the old Duke, and that she's maybe impressed by the animal, I think. Lord Clark said, must be blooded. Chris knife, she must have a moisture catch. Chaya says, Shadout was cleared by Howard, but still got him with a knife. Yeah, they were back there. The Reverend Mother came on with her Gom Jamar. Howard is a master assassin who sees threats everywhere, but his security is full of holes. Yes, it seems that, I suppose that is the point, really, isn't it? Howard's security seems to be rubbish, doesn't it? And there's more to come, as we know. But yeah, I think really Howard should have been sort of retired by now, I think. I still think it's funny that the general assumption that most houses must know how to mess with a Mentat, because it strikes me as not being a particularly difficult thing to do. But yeah, I think the grotesquerie of this big bull's head as the painting and all, this little woman as well. And again, we get this, this housekeeper is a bit bloodthirsty in some ways. Not bloodthirsty, but is not bothered by blood, and has lost some of her own, has shed other people's. This kind of thing, is used to it, and we get a bit of banter with them. I think again, Mapes says, I've lost more blood than you could have drawn with that puny scratch that you gave me. And of course, you'd rather I'd cut deeper. No, So just the wee bit. It seems like quite friendly banter, and that Mapes is once the whole prophecy thing, the whole knife thing has been dealt with, and the correct responses have been sort of garnered from Jessica, that she's very relaxed and just straight back to her ordinary ordinary life business, if you like. But her character's still there, and I think there's still a sense of cheekiness about her. And of course, what she tells us quite a lot. Would you rather I cut deeper? No. The body's water is scant enough without gushing a wasteful of it into the air. You did the right thing. And Jessica, noting the words and manners, caught the deeper implications in the phrase, the body's water. Again, she felt a sense of oppression at the importance of water on Arrakis. So, yeah. And of course, what side do you want, the bull and the whatever? Picture. Ever the practical one, this Mapes. It's another pointing out of the characteristic of the Fremen. They're practical. Use your own judgment, Mapes. It makes no real difference. As you say, my lady, I love this thing. Killed an old duke, did you? She crooned to the bull's head. And shall I get a handler to help you? Jessica asked. I'll manage, my lady. Yes, she'll manage, Jessica thought. There's that about this Fremen creature. The drive to manage. I think everything that we're learning about Mapes here is what we're learning about the Fremen. All of Mapes' characteristics here. The blue within blue eyes, prune dry, all of these things. They're not just about her. They're telling us a lot about the Fremen as well. Practical. They can manage this kind of thing that they attribute to these people. And of course, we also know previously Yui was telling us, their kids are really vicious. They're dangerous. They compose poems to their knives. Here's the local housekeeper. She's brought a knife to the first meeting, talking about how many people. I've killed people. Yeah. Shall we hang some paintings? It gives you a sense of the Fremen are a bit different, and that there is a toughness and a practicality to them, I suppose. But I think Mapes' character here is very funny. Just in terms of, if we open up our imagination, picture her, the way she's described, and she's cackling and, having a bit of a joke, I think, but also presents as quite possibly very deadly woman, and also sort of being caught up in some kind of religious ideology. Yeah, she's an interesting character, Mapes. And I think is it Linda Hunt played Mapes in the David Lynch version of the film, and I again, not on screen very much, but did so much with the character and the thought processes. Again, I thought that Mapes in the new film as a character is massively underused. Where did we get to? So yeah, and of course killed an old duke, did you? Yeah. So she's just fine. So Jessica, where are we? Oh, I've gone over the page. That's why I can't find me next note. There we go. So Jessica felt the cold sheath of the crysknife beneath her bodice and thought of the long chain of Bene Gesserit's scheming that had forged another link here. Because of that scheming, she'd survived a deadly crisis. It cannot be hurried, Mapes had said, yet there was a tempo of headlong rushing to this place that filled Jessica with foreboding. And in many ways, then, this has been another test. This has been almost the Gom Jabbar for Jessica, hasn't it? It's been a potentially deadly test, and she's survived and passed, come through the other side. But this sense of foreboding, the pace of things seemed to be running out of control, going too quick. And we've got an awful lot that's just happened already. And this is just the first morning in Arrakis, isn't it? So we all, again, with Jessica throughout, just to recap, her feelings, we've been really getting an insight into her feelings. frightened, unsure of herself, confused, foreboding, you know, fearful of Leto. And we kind of end with a little bit more foreboding in this chapter. Right, not all the preparations. There we are. Yet there was a tempo of headlong rushing to this place that filled Jessica with foreboding, and not all the preparations of the missionary Protectiva, nor Howat's suspicious inspection of this castellated pile of rocks could dispel the feeling. So Jessica basically leaves Mapes to it, tells her to get the keys, etc., sort out a few bits and pieces. But we're left sort of, as we go into the end of this chapter, again, we get some of her thoughts before we go to Mapes. And it's Jessica turned away, thinking, how it may have passed this residency is safe, but there's something wrong about this place. Something wrong about the place. I can feel it. And that's just as Chaya was saying there, yeah, who gives a monkeys if Howat has cleared this place? There's something wrong. And of course, something is wrong. And her feelings are correct. And as I said, if we have a bit of sense, yeah, people seem to get past it. At this point now, we've got two people straight past this Howat security. We should really be going, doesn't seem secure at all. So as the chapter ends, of course, she gets an urgent need to see Paul. And she began walking towards the arched doorway that led into the passage to the dining hall and the family wing. Faster and faster she walked until she's almost running. The real sense of urgency, sense of danger, foreboding has got her. She wants to see her son. Behind her, and this is how we end this chapter, Mapes paused in clearing the wrappings from the bull's head, looked at her retreating back. She's the one, all right, she muttered. Poor thing. And we're there. We're at the end of the chapter. And again, it's a big shift within the action. We've moved to a different planet. We haven't seen hardly any of it. We're inside. Almost all of the action has taken place inside a gigantic hall. Mention of a dining room, etc., etc. And as I said, even there's something about this place that feels anachronistic, even to Jessica. But all our feelings that all the language that Herbert's building up here, that isolated, cold, lonely, but especially this cold house, cold feelings. And then it expands, maybe just not the room is cold, the house is cold, the whole city is cold. And throughout, I suppose, in that we get this kind of continual level of apprehension and fear with Jessica. And as like most of these chapters, we've got a couple of wee interactions here, as well, really, with Jessica and Leto. And not all, to me anyway, not all seeming absolutely chirpy within the state of their relationship. And it seems a very one-sided relationship, as much as I'm sure there is love in it from Leto's point of view. There is also fear in it. And as I said, the interesting thing about this couple, if we look at Leto and Jessica as a couple, they're both fondly remembering the day he bought her. Which is bizarre, and again, we have our suspension of disbelief. We're reading a science fiction book, but something, as I said, as Paul Atreides would say, something should offend our sensibilities about that. And I think everything about Leto in this chapter pretty much offends my sensibilities. And I think that is the interesting thing that we should consider. Leto Atreides, remember, is a hero to his people, whom he's going to get them all killed. And he really doesn't seem to take advice very well, does he? And he's going for long chance, isn't it? That he's playing the really bad odds game. And I think just the difference between the interactions between Jessica and Leto here, and then Jessica and Shadout Mapes, and the bridge between them is kind of Leto leaving the room and shouting at Mapes and moving in and slamming the door. We get a kind of shift in behavior. Jessica and Leto should be super friendly and work together, etc. Give me 1 wee second, folks. But at the same time, Mapes is a stranger who's presenting in quite a deadly fashion. But you get a better sense of flow of conversation and banter between Mapes and Jessica than you do between Leto and Jessica. Leto and Jessica seem more strangers to me here than Mapes and Jessica do, and I think that's, I don't know if you guys get that from the writing maybe, but I generally get that sense that it's that even with the knife and the whole cutting of the breast and all of this stuff and the potential of poison, that there's a better dynamic, I think, just in terms of the story between the two women. But Leto certainly comes across as aloof, angry, shouty, Mr. Stampy Footy, entitled, shouts at the servants, and tells the woman who's arguably the love of his life that she should be glad he hasn't married her, because then she won't have to sit and stare at a severed head while she eats all the time. There's something quite awkward and weird about Leto, I think, that just doesn't sit right with me, I think. And again, I think, as I said, the one thing I like to point out is that we're often told, in relation to the qualities of Leto's qualities, etc., that I think a lot of that is propaganda, and I think ultimately his great claim to fame will be that he's Paul Atreides' daddy. Jessica remembers feeling uneasy, not a fond memory. I think there's a innate bond between the women by virtue of the general misogyny in society. It's an interesting point, Shia. And I agree with the fundamental misogyny in society. As my wife's a misogynist and I'm a misanthrope. So there we go. But you have, yeah. I don't know if you get that in the writing, but I just thought that whenever reading that, Leto seems really cold, frosty. Look, I'm out of here, slam. Yeah, there is some sort, and I think there's a lot more to this than I suppose. And the Bene Gesserit, I think the role of women in this book is really interesting. How it's presented, what it's meant to be, what it's meant to look like. And I think even just some of the stuff around at the time, for example, I think it's in The Stars My Destination, for example, Tiger, with a video coming this week, because of the jaunting, it creates that system of purdah within that universe. But yeah, there's the sense of how Jessica's treated in this. I suppose it's historical treatment if we want to think about it. But it is the most bizarre thing that she remembered, and we get to look at Jessica. We get to look at Leto through Jessica's eyes. We get to look at Jessica through Leto's eyes. I hope I said both of them the right way there. And of course, we get to see the real thought processes and what they actually say. And as much as there is syzygy, if you like, at this point, in terms of the archetypes, yeah, they play off each other in a particular way. That if we talk about Herbert's ideas of using archetypes and Jungian mandalas to sort of balance characters and pair them against each other, this kind of thing. She, everything about their interaction, but especially when she's looking them over, giving us description, always predatory, sharp angles, her sudden fear of him and of him not. And I said, if we were really that love there, that sentence should be a sudden fear for him. If that's the real love and respect that in their partnership there, it's not for him though, it's of him. She's a sudden fear of him. And it could be his stupidity, his stubbornness, it could be all sorts of things, And I think particularly the way his interactions with Jessica as he touches her arm, brushes away, and that's it. And he strides about. How he's described as like someone like a teenage boy doesn't know how to behave around women. That kind of thing. He seems awkward. The fact that he can speak to Jessica at all, I suppose that it's all business. It's and his thought process is maybe taking us somewhere else, but he seems easily distracted and jumps to here, there, or everywhere, wonders about her breeding, etc. This kind of thing. And then just tears off in a bit of a mood and slams the door. And I just got nothing that even particularly, as much as that she knows that comforting's not right for him, he doesn't really even consider comforting her in any way. They have uprooted, they have left. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of concerns, and I don't know, maybe is it just much that he understands that she's competent and can sort it out, but it seemed a one-way street, I think. And of course, him saying that, I would do anything to be alone with you, Jessica, and his thoughts followed immediately by "I'm going to eat in the mess." It's I don't know, and and I suppose we're meant to have a bit of sympathy for Leto because we know he's doomed, but maybe it's Leto that's doomed himself. It's just his actions and his thinking, Right, Jason, aside from the banquet, women bond easily throughout the story. I think this chapter makes Jessica a much more sympathetic and likable character. If you question her materiality with the Gom Jabbar, yet she's more or maternity here with the John. She's much more human here. Yes, maternality. Yes, got that, child. I totally agree. It really, because initially when we meet Jessica, here's the hero's mother, and we're going to get that "my mother isn't my enemy" thing later on. But it really should set us, whoa, what kind of this sort of behavior goes against what we should consider maternal instinct, shouldn't we? That, and of course, you're absolutely right. And there are things, of course, we get a little bit of that. It takes a fair measure of nerve to stand at a door like that. There's an attempt to give Paul some empathy for, but genuinely here, and Paul won't be able to relate to this. Paul's the ducal heir of a planet, planetary governorship, etc. But this woman has been bought and paid for by buyers, and the place that she considers home, safe and warm, associates it with warmth because this hall reminds her on the Bene Gesserit school. Well, they sold her to this guy, Leto, and not only that, as opposed to be a bound concubine, means a concubine that she's not allowed to go with anyone else, basically, that she's stuck with him. And you actually wonder, how does that work? Is it a yearly subscription? Is it a one-off massive payment? Why? And is it common practice for dukes in the empire to buy their partners? It is a bit bizarre. And as I said, her own fears of the situation are added to by her fear of him, I think. And so Leto's qualities, etc. I keep looking at him basically and not liking him personally. And I suppose he's not our hero at the end of the day. He's the hero's father. We know he's going to die. our sympathies with him, kind of whether well, really, and I think this is the one of the things that Frank does is he's very good at garnering our sympathy for people that we shouldn't be sympathetic to. And we get this sense of doom about Leto. We're told all of these things in these epigraphs. Oh, we should, he was a blah, what an admirable, how much people admire him. But as we learn bit by bit, and that this guy, the one thing that this guy is good at apparently is propaganda. Almost everything I think about him is sophisticated in the old fashioned sense of the word. I'm not saying he's stupid. He's well educated, obviously too. But the whole it's all about appearances, and I think a lot of what we find out about Leto is also about appearances. I think the reality of the man is he's just a man, like most people. But you could mock up situations that are exist in this book and go, right, what would you do? You would not do what Leto does. I'm pretty certain of it. You know. But I also think, I mean, in terms of how Herbert's writing the book and trying to present some of we're building up the world knowledge, we're fleshing out our world here of Arrakis and the Dune universe. And we're doing it through character interaction. Is that we've learned quite a lot about the planet already, how things work, not to full detail, but we're getting a vague sense of it, that water is important, and we're also starting to get religion, prophecy, all of these little things kind of starting to make sense. And we're getting a little bit of history to the family Atreides, bullfighting, in the year 10,000, whatever it is, etc., etc. I must have a wee look actually at some point. I think there's a good, I think there's a reasonable entry on Duke Leto's father. Let me see. Atreides, Manale, Leto II. In the Dune Encyclopedia. I wonder, is there anything on him in here? Leto II. There we go. What have we got? Well, there's one here called Minotauros. I wonder what that is. Oh, there you go. Really? The Duke Encyclopedia has Minotauros 10,059 to 10,163, properly called by his nickname Duke Mintor. Called in his later years the Old Duke, also Siradar, Duke of Caladan, Count Chalcedony, Count Thuestes, there's a name, Lord of Tantalus, 266 head of the House of Atreides, son of Duke Minos IX by his concubine Lady Caitlin Callan, demi-brother of Duke Paulus, 18 awarded for Emperor's New, blah, 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 named special. Is that him? No, hang on. Oh, he died in the bull ring at the age of 104. That is him. So it was Duke Paulus according to this one, Duke Paulus the 18th, and then he was succeeded by Minotauros Atreides as the name given for the dukes. There we go, in the Dune Encyclopedia. Minotauros, very much. There you go. The Minotaur's name is Asterion, by the way, which I think is also the name of King Minos' father, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to have a look at the Minoan myths, but yeah, figured there was something to do with the Minotaur, etc. there. But yeah, I don't know what you think, guys. I think the interactions with Mapes are much more friendly. Chai is saying some sort of innate bond between the women by virtue of this misogynistic society. I think that's kind of amplified a wee bit here whenever Mapes figures out that Jessica's not noble born. But I just thought they interacted much better. And of course, there's the initial fear and what's going on, but once the matter of the prophecy is dealt with, I suppose the subterfuge is down, and you've got that level of certainty with Mapes at the end. She's the one, all right, you know. And it kind of matches Jessica's certainty at the start. I think where she's going, no, she thought not. That kind of, you know. But then there's sympathy at the end. Just poor thing, you know. And so of course we get to see Jessica interact with Mapes. We get to see Paul interact with Mapes as well. Mapes is a really interesting character, and we learn so much about the Fremen. We start to get some of their ideas. We figured out what a Chris knife is. We should have figured out what a still suit is by now if we're using the back of the book. Just ideas of water, you know, fanaticism that this woman's prepared to die. Here, I think it's a bit scary. And yeah, but very much we've got these juxtapositions, the two conversations kind of framed in this great hall, and a lot of talk of the dining room. So the bull's head, the portrait, and yeah, and the slamming of the door, etc. And all of this is just kind of where they're unpacking, if you know what I mean, just boxes coming and going. And we get that bustle of the household being moved from one planet to the other, and in particular that sense of movement, pace. How is it? It's put that there's a Jessica feels that there's a tempo of a headlong rushing, and it does. It all seems to be a bit rushed, doesn't it? And of course, with time going a week, then a couple of days, then a day, and boom, we're on Arrakis. And as I said, hopefully we're going to start seeing a wee bit more. But as we go, each chapter we hit, as I said, and it's through the characterization, by the way. Really, I think one of the things that for Denis Villeneuve's Dune suffers from greatly is very poor characterization throughout. I've often you'll see it in my Dune videos, the PhD videos. I've often said one of the things I thought about this book was it's got great characterization, really, really good. You know, mucho effort put into this, and yeah, the minor characters are really, really important, I think. And as I said, I think they tend to shine in ways that the major characters don't. Our major characters up to this point have all been quite reserved in some ways, while characters on the sidelines have been fascinating. You know, the characters that have been really interesting so far for me have been Gaius Helena Mohiam, have been Peter de Vries, and Mapes has been particularly interesting. I didn't find I wanted to know too much about Gurney. I didn't find him particularly exciting or interesting the way he was introduced. I didn't think Thufir was that in your face either. But Mapes is definitely an interesting character. Oh, who's this? You know, and as I said, not really important to the story, but actually crucially important in reality, and really important in terms of introducing us to the world of Arrakis, but especially to the Fremen and how they think. You know. But there we go. Well, at 20 past 12, folks, I'm going to have to call that a day. That's another chapter done. 3 hours and 20 minutes in, roughly, as again, my old throat's going. So, well, hopefully, thank you very much, by the way, everybody, for joining us and contributing tonight. As always, it's been great fun, and we'll hopefully be back on here again on Thursday at 9 o'clock. I did Gurney, just a faithful attack dog. I think he's a character becomes more interesting later on. Lord Crunk, you know, but again, just the sort of more of the shade of him at the minute. But I think all the characters that we will get used to get fleshed out well enough, I suppose, you know. But there we go. But yeah, no, he's a good character, don't get me wrong, but he's not that interesting at this point, I think. And I think certainly the minor characters that steal the show up until this point are Peter and Mapes, to be honest with you. And yeah, I've always liked Mapes' character. I think Mapes is excellent. So there we go. But listen, thank you very much, folks, for joining us. I'm going to say good night and hopefully keep me throat going a wee bit for next time. And as I said, I hope it's very stormy here tonight. So we'll batten down the hatches. So no matter where you are, guys, look after yourselves and take care. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. And we'll see you all on Thursday at 9 o'clock. All the very best. Thank you and good night. Take care. Bye-bye. Do 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 do.